Sam Rodriguez stared at his daughter's college acceptance letter, knowing he'd never earn enough on the night shift to make her dreams come true. For 15 years, the widowed mechanic had worked the lonely midnight hours at Phoenix Motors, invisible to management and forgotten by a world that valued youth over wisdom. Then came the night that changed everything. The company's 2 million prototype engine seized up just hours before the biggest investor meeting in Phoenix Motors history. While executives panicked and engineers threw up their hands, Sam quietly approached the silent machine. In 10 minutes, he fixed what others couldn't solve in hours. But what the new CEO did when she witnessed his work would shock everyone on the factory floor. Could one moment of recognition really transform a man's entire life? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The alarm clock's harsh buzz cut through the pre-dawn darkness at 6:30 a.m., but Sam Rodriguez was already awake, staring at the water stain on his bedroom ceiling. He'd been counting the cracks in that stain for 3 years now, ever since Maria died and sleep became something that happened to other people. The faint sound of Elena practicing her saxophone drifted through the thin apartment walls. She always rose early to practice before school, just like her mother used to do. Sam rolled out of bed, his 55-year-old joints protesting the movement with familiar aches. His calloused hands reached automatically for the wedding ring on his left finger, Maria's simple gold band that he'd worn beside his own since the funeral. Some mornings he forgot she was gone for those first precious seconds, expecting to smell coffee brewing and hear her humming along to Elena's music. But the silence always reminded him. The small kitchen was exactly as he'd left it 12 hours ago, spotless, because there was no one else to clean up after. He started the coffee maker, an ancient machine that Maria had bought at a garage sale 15 years back, and began preparing Elena's breakfast. 2 pieces of whole wheat toast, scrambled eggs with just a touch of cheese, and fresh orange juice squeezed from the Valencia oranges that grew in the courtyard of their apartment complex. It was the same breakfast every morning, a routine that gave structure to their fractured world. "Morning, Dad." Elena appeared in the doorway, her long black hair still damp from the shower, carrying her saxophone case and backpack. At 17, she was the perfect blend of her parents Maria's graceful features and musical talent, combined with Sam's steady determination and dark eyes. She'd grown 3 inches in the past year, and Sam sometimes caught glimpses of the woman she was becoming, brilliant and passionate and destined for things far beyond the boundaries of their small Phoenix neighborhood. "Morning, mija. Sleep okay?" Sam slid the plate across the small table, noting the shadows under her eyes. Elena had been staying up late with college applications, scholarship essays, and the part-time job at the music store that helped cover her lesson expenses. "Better than you, I think." She sat down and took a grateful sip of orange juice. "I heard you moving around at 3 a.m. again." Sam poured his coffee into the chipped mug that read, "World's Greatest Dad, a Father's Day gift from Elena when she was 8. Just thinking, the Hendersons upstairs got a new baby. Little thing cries every few hours." Elena gave him a look that said she wasn't buying the excuse, but she didn't push. They'd learned to navigate around each other's pain carefully, like dancers who knew each other's steps by heart. "I got something yesterday," Elena said quietly, reaching into her backpack. She pulled out a thick envelope with the Arizona State University logo embossed in maroon and gold. "I was going to wait, but I can't keep it to myself anymore." Sam's coffee mug froze halfway to his lips. They'd talked about college applications, had filled out the financial aid forms together, but seeing the actual letter made everything real in a way that stole his breath. "Open it," he whispered. Elena's hands trembled slightly as she tore the envelope. Her eyes scanned the letter once, twice, and then a smile broke across her face like sunrise. "I got in, Dad. Full academic consideration for the jazz performance program. They want me." The pride that swelled in Sam's chest was immediately followed by a crushing weight of reality. He knew exactly what full academic consideration meant. It was University speak for "you're smart enough, but can you pay?" The jazz program at ASU was prestigious, competitive, and expensive. Even with financial aid, they'd need at least $15,000 a year for tuition, books, and living expenses. Sam made 32,000 a year on the night shift at Phoenix Motors. After rent, groceries, Elena's saxophone lessons, and the medical bills that still trickled in from Maria's final months, they had maybe $300 in savings. $300 toward a $15,000 dream. "That's incredible, Elena. I'm so proud of you." He meant every word, even as his mind raced through impossible calculations. Maybe he could pick up overtime shifts. Maybe they could take out loans. Maybe he could sell the truck, take the bus to work. Elena was watching his face, and her smile faltered. "Dad, I know it's expensive. I've been looking at community college programs too, and there's a really good music program at Phoenix College that—" "No." The word came out sharper than he intended. "No, Mija, you're not settling for community college because of money. We'll figure it out." But even as he said it, Sam felt the familiar weight of inadequacy settling on his shoulders. Maria had always been the dreamer, the one who believed everything would work out. She'd encouraged Elena's music from the time she could hold a plastic recorder, buying second-hand sheet music and saving for months to afford a decent saxophone. Sam was the practical one, the one who worried about rent and groceries and keeping the lights on. After Maria died, he'd tried to be both parents the dreamer and the worrier, the cheerleader and the disciplinarian. Most days he felt like he was failing at both jobs. Elena reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "We'll figure it out together, Dad. Maybe I can get more scholarships or work more hours at the music store. You concentrate on school and your music. Let me worry about the money." Sam stood up and kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her shampoo. "I've got to get some sleep before work tonight. You need a ride to school?" "Marcus is picking me up. We're practicing for the spring concert during lunch." Elena gathered her dishes and rinsed them in the sink, another piece of their morning routine. "Dad, thank you for everything. Mom would be proud of both of us." After Elena left for school, Sam tried to sleep, but the college letter seemed to glow from where she'd left it on the kitchen counter. He found himself calculating and recalculating, trying to make the numbers work. Even if he picked up every available overtime shift, even if he took a second job during the day, the math was unforgiving. The truth was that Sam Rodriguez had been invisible for 15 years, and invisible men didn't get raises or promotions or second chances. They got older and more tired, and eventually got replaced by younger workers who didn't require health insurance or vacation time. Phoenix Motors had been bleeding money for the past 3 years, ever since the Korean automakers had started undercutting their prices. The company that had once employed 4,000 workers now limped along with barely 1,500, and rumors of layoffs circulated constantly through the factory floor. The older workersmen like Sam, who remembered when Phoenix Motors made the best engines in the Southwest, they were the most vulnerable. Too expensive to keep, too young to retire, too old to start over somewhere else. The night shift was where dreams went to die, Sam thought as he finally drifted off to sleep. It was where men like him kept the machines running, while the important people slept soundly in their suburban homes, never thinking about the invisible hands that made their success possible. But tonight would be different. Tonight, the invisible man would be seen. At 10:30 p.m., Sam arrived at Phoenix Motors for another midnight shift. The factory sprawled across 12 acres of industrial Phoenix, a maze of corrugated metal buildings and smokestacks that had been belching steam and ambition since 1962. In the old days, the parking lot would have been full of American-made trucks and sedans. Now, it was half empty, dotted with older vehicles held together by hope and determination. Sam parked his 15-year-old Ford pickup next to Jerry Williamson's even older Chevy. Jerry was 62, a machinist who'd worked at Phoenix Motors for 38 years. He'd trained half the day shift supervisors, but they treated him like a relic now, someone who didn't understand computer-controlled machinery or just-in-time manufacturing principles. Evening, Sam. Jerry emerged from his truck with a thermos of coffee and a lunch pail that his wife had packed with the same care she'd shown for 4 decades. You hear about the big meeting tomorrow. What meeting? Board of directors flying in from Detroit, bringing some investors who might buy the whole operation. Jerry's weathered face was grim. Word is they're looking to modernize everything. Probably means more layoffs. Sam felt his stomach tighten. Layoffs meant the most expendable workers would go first. The older ones, the night shift, the men whose skills couldn't be easily quantified on a spreadsheet. They walked through the employee entrance together, past the bulletin board covered with safety reminders and productivity charts. The night shift supervisor, Dave Chen, was already at his desk, looking harried as he reviewed the evening's work orders. Rodriguez, Williamson. Dave looked up from his clipboard. We've got a problem. The prototype in Bay 7 is acting up again. Day shift couldn't figure it out, and we need it running smooth for the investor tour tomorrow morning. Sam knew about the prototype Phoenix Motors' last desperate attempt to compete with the electric vehicle market. $2 million of cutting-edge technology and engineering designed to power a new line of hybrid luxury cars. If it worked, it might save the company. If it didn't, they'd all be looking for new jobs by Christmas. What kind of problem? Jerry asked. Engine management system keeps throwing error codes. Won't start, won't even turn over. The day shift engineers ran every diagnostic they could think of. Computer says everything should be fine, but the damn thing won't budge. Sam and Jerry exchanged glances. They'd seen this before: complicated systems that looked perfect on paper, but had some small, overlooked problem that prevented them from working in the real world. The young engineers with their computer degrees often missed the simple solutions that experienced mechanics could spot immediately. Want us to take a look? Sam offered. Knock yourselves out, but don't mess with anything major. We can't afford to make it worse. Bay 7 was usually reserved for the most important projects, separated from the main factory floor by soundproof glass walls. The prototype sat under bright fluorescent lights like a mechanical patient in an operating room. It was beautiful. Sam had to admit sleek silver body panels surrounding an engine that looked more like a sculpture than a machine. Hybrid electric and gasoline systems integrated so seamlessly that it was hard to tell where one ended and the other began. 3-day shift engineers stood around the prototype, looking frustrated and defeated. They'd been there since 6 a.m., running diagnostic after diagnostic, replacing components that the computer said might be faulty. Nothing had worked. Any luck? Jerry asked. Tom Phillips, the lead engineer, shook his head. It's like the engine management system is in some kind of loop. Everything tests fine individually, but when we try to start the integrated system, it just dies. No error messages, no feedback. It's like the computer can't see the engine at all. Sam walked slowly around the prototype, his experienced eyes taking in details that the computer diagnostics might miss. The engine was a masterpiece of modern engineering, but it was still an engine: pistons and cylinders and fuel lines and electrical connections, just more sophisticated than the ones he'd been working on for 30 years. Mind if I listen to it? Sam asked. Tom shrugged. Be my guest. We've tried everything else. Sam leaned over the engine compartment and had Tom attempt to start the prototype. Instead of the healthy rumble of an engine turning over, there was only a faint electrical hum followed by silence. But in that silence, Sam heard something the others had missed: a tiny clicking sound, almost inaudible, coming from somewhere deep in the engine compartment. Try it again, Sam said, closing his eyes and focusing entirely on the sound. There it was again. Click, pause, click, pause. Like a relay trying to engage but failing to make connection. Sam straightened up and walked to the other side of the engine compartment. The hybrid system was incredibly complex, with dozens of sensors and control modules communicating with each other through a web of electrical connections. But somewhere in all that complexity was something simply: loose connection, a failed relay, a sensor that had worked its way free. Tom, you got a schematic of the electrical system? Sure. Tom pulled up the blueprint on his tablet and handed it to Sam. The schematic was intimidating, hundreds of components connected by lines that looked like abstract art. But Sam had learned to read these diagrams the same way Elena read sheet music, recognizing patterns and relationships that told a story. This relay here, Sam pointed to a small component buried deep in the engine compartment. It controls communication between the hybrid battery system and the main engine management computer. If it's not making proper contact, the computer would think the engine doesn't exist. Tom frowned. We tested that relay. Computer says it's fine. Computer tests electrical continuity, but if the relay housing is cracked or the mounting bracket is loose, it might make contact when it's not under load, but fail when the engine tries to start. Sam reached into his toolbox and pulled out a small flashlight. He squeezed into the tight space around the engine compartment, following the wiring harness to the relay in question. It took 5 minutes of careful searching, but there it was, a hairline crack in the relay housing that would be invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. Found it, Sam called out. Relay housing is cracked. Connection fails under load. I'll be damned, Jerry muttered. How'd you spot that? 30 years of listening to engines complain. Sam carefully removed the cracked relay and examined it under the light. This little $20 part was keeping your $2 million engine from starting. Tom was already on his phone, calling the parts department to find a replacement relay. They've got one in stock. I can have it here in 10 minutes. While they waited for the part, Sam noticed something else. Diagnostic port hidden behind a panel that most people would never think to check. It was an older style connection, the kind used in the prototype's early development phases, but usually removed before final assembly. You know about this port? Sam asked Tom. What port? Tom leaned in for a closer look. I've never seen that before. It's not on any of the schematics. Sam smiled. The port was a remnant from the prototype's development, probably left in place by some engineer who thought it might be useful for future diagnostics. The kind of detail that would be overlooked in the rush to finish the project, but invaluable for troubleshooting problems exactly like this one. If we connect to this port, we can probably get real-time data from the engine management system instead of relying on the standard diagnostic interface. Might help us catch problems before they shut down the whole system. When the replacement relay arrived, Sam installed it carefully, making sure the mounting bracket was secure and the electrical connections were tight. Then he connected his diagnostic equipment to the hidden port and nodded to Tom. Try starting it now. The prototype's engine came to life with a whisper-smooth purr that made everyone in Bay 7 smile. The hybrid system engaged seamlessly, electric motors and gasoline engine working in perfect harmony. All the diagnostic readings were green. All the error codes were cleared. Beautiful, Jerry said, and Sam nodded in agreement. But as Sam was packing up his tools, he noticed they weren't alone. A woman in an expensive business suit stood outside the glass walls of Bay 7, watching them work. She was probably in her late 40s, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a professional style and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Even from a distance, Sam could tell she was someone important, the way she stood, the way the other managers deferred to her presence. "Who's that?" Sam asked Tom quietly. "Helena Price, new CEO. She's been here about 6 months, trying to turn the company around." Tom's voice carried a mixture of respect and fear. "Word is she's ruthless, but fair. Saved her last company from bankruptcy by cutting costs and streamlining operations." Helena Price was talking to Dave Chen now, pointing toward the prototype and asking questions. Dave was nodding enthusiastically, probably explaining how the night shift had solved the problem that had stumped the day shift engineers. Sam felt suddenly self-conscious. He'd spent 15 years being invisible, comfortable in his anonymity. Being noticed by the CEO was not necessarily a good thing, especially if she was looking for ways to cut costs and eliminate redundancies. "We should get back to our regular assignments," Sam told Jerry quietly. But as they gathered their tools and prepared to leave Bay 7, Helena Price walked through the door. Up close, she was even more intimidating, not because she was cruel or harsh, but because she radiated the kind of focused intelligence that could see through any pretense or excuse. "Which one of you gentlemen fixed the prototype?" she asked. Tom pointed towards Sam. Sam Rodriguez figured out the problem. $20 relay was keeping the whole system from starting. Helena's eyes focused on Sam with laser intensity. "How long have you been working here, Mr. Rodriguez?" 15 years, ma'am. Night shift maintenance." "And how long did it take you to diagnose the problem?" Sam felt every eye in Bay 7 watching him. Maybe 10 minutes to find the actual problem, another 5 to locate the diagnostic port. "The diagnostic port that's not on any of our schematics?" "Yes, ma'am. Left over from development, I think. Might be useful for future troubleshooting." Helena was quiet for a long moment, studying Sam with an expression he couldn't read. Finally, she nodded to herself, as if she'd made some internal decision. "Mr. Rodriguez, I'd like to speak with you privately. Tomorrow today. Actual at 2 p.m. in my office. We have some things to discuss." After Helena left, the other engineers gathered around Sam, full of questions and speculation. But Sam felt a cold knot of anxiety forming in his stomach. In his experience, when the CEO wanted to speak with a night shift maintenance worker privately, it was rarely good news. "What do you think she wants?" Jerry asked as they walked back to their regular assignments. "Probably to make sure I understand my place," Sam replied. "CEOs don't like it when the hired help shows up the engineering department." But even as he said it, Sam couldn't shake the memory of how Helena Price had looked at him not like a maintenance worker who'd overstepped his bounds, but like someone who'd just solved a problem that everyone else had missed. For the first time in 15 years, Sam Rodriguez had been truly seen. Whether that was a blessing or a curse, he'd find out in a few hours. The storm hit Phoenix just after midnight, unusual for October, but fierce enough to rattle the factory's metal walls and send sheets of rain across the parking lot. Sam had been working on a routine maintenance check when the lights flickered and the main power grid shifted to backup generators. These kinds of electrical disturbances always made the sophisticated machinery nervous, and tonight would prove no exception. He was torquing bolts on a transmission housing when the alarm started, a sharp, insistent beeping that meant something had gone seriously wrong in Bay 7. Sam dropped his tools and ran toward the sound, Jerry close behind him. They found Tom Phillips and 2 other day shift engineers standing around the prototype, their faces pale in the harsh fluorescent lighting. "What happened?" Sam asked. "Power surge from the storm," Tom said, his voice tight with panic. "The prototype was running fine after your repair, but when the lightning hit, something in the electrical system overloaded. Now it won't start at all, won't even acknowledge that we're trying to communicate with it." Sam looked at the diagnostic screens surrounding the prototype. Instead of the neat rows of data he'd seen earlier, there was nothing but error messages and system failures. The engine management computer had gone completely dark, as if someone had erased its memory. "How bad is it?" Jerry asked. "Bad." Tom ran his hands through his hair. "The board meeting is at 8 a.m. Helena Price is supposed to demonstrate this prototype to investors who are considering buying the whole company. If we can't get it running—" He didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone in the factory knew that Phoenix Motors was hanging by a thread. The prototype represented their last chance to prove they could compete in the modern automotive market. Without it, the investors would walk away and the company would be liquidated by Christmas. "Have you called the engineering team?" Sam asked. "They're on their way, should be here within the hour." But Tom's expression suggested he didn't have much faith in their ability to solve the problem quickly. Sam approached the prototype cautiously, like a doctor examining a patient who'd just suffered a stroke. The external systems all appeared normal, no visible damage, no burned components, no obvious signs of electrical failure. But when he tried to access the engine management system through the standard diagnostic port, he got nothing but digital silence. "The hidden port," Sam said suddenly. "The one we used earlier, is it still functional?" Tom pulled out his diagnostic equipment and connected it to the concealed port Sam had discovered. For a moment, There was nothing but static on the screen. Then, slowly, lines of code began scrolling past, not the clean, organized data they'd seen before, but fragments of corrupted information, like pieces of a shattered mirror. "The system's still there," Sam said, studying the readout, "but the power surge scrambled the engine management software. It's like the computer forgot how to talk to the engine." Jerry whistled low. "Can you fix scrambled software?" "Not me. That's way beyond my skill level." Sam looked at Tom. "How long would it take your team to rebuild the engine management program from scratch?" "Days, maybe weeks. We'd have to start from the original development code and rebuild every calibration, every sensor mapping, every operational parameter." Tom's voice was hollow. "We don't have days. We have 6 hours." The situation was becoming clear to everyone in Bay 7. Phoenix Motor's last hope was sitting dead in the water, killed by a random lightning strike at the worst possible moment. In 6 hours, Helena Price would have to face a room full of investors and admit that the company's revolutionary prototype was nothing more than an expensive piece of sculpture. Sam walked around the prototype again, his mind racing through possibilities. The hardware was intact, was sure of that. The problem was purely software, a matter of the engine management computer not knowing how to communicate with the physical systems it was supposed to control. "Tom, do you have the original calibration data, the baseline settings from when the prototype was first assembled?" "Somewhere in the development files, sure, but without the engine management software to interpret it." "What if we bypass the engine management computer entirely?" Sam interrupted. "Run the engine on manual controls until we can get the software rebuilt." Tom stared at him. "You can't run a hybrid system manually. There are too many variables, too many systems that have to coordinate perfectly. The electric motors, the regenerative braking, the battery management system, they all have to work together within millisecond timing. A human being can't possibly." "A human being can't," Sam agreed. "But what about the old backup system?" "What backup system?" Sam pointed to a cluster of components hidden behind the main engine bay. When they were developing this prototype, they must have had some kind of fail-safe system, a way to run basic engine functions if the main computer failed during testing. "Look at these relay boxes. They're not connected to anything now, but I bet they used to control basic engine operations." Tom pulled up the original development schematics on his tablet, scrolling through dozens of technical drawings. "You're right. There's a manual override system that was supposed to be removed before final assembly. Basic engine controls, fuel injection, ignition timing, throttle response. But it's completely disconnected from the hybrid systems. What if we reconnect it, just enough to get the engine running for the demonstration? It would be like driving a Ferrari with a lawnmower engine. None of the advanced features would work, no hybrid efficiency, no regenerative braking, no computer-optimized performance. The investors would see right through it." Sam looked around Bay 7 at the faces of the engineers and technicians. These were good people, skilled professionals, who'd spent years developing this prototype. They deserved better than to watch their work die because of a random power surge. "Maybe they don't need to see the advanced features," Sam said quietly. "Maybe they just need to see that the engine runs, that Phoenix Motors can still build something that works." As if summoned by the conversation, Helena Price appeared at the entrance to Bay 7. She was still wearing the business suit from earlier, but now it was rumpled and her hair was slightly disheveled. She'd obviously been awakened by the crisis and rushed back to the factory. "Status report," she said without preamble. Tom explained the situation as concisely as possible: the power surge, the corrupted software, the impossibility of rebuilding the engine management system before the investor meeting. Helena listened without interruption, her face growing more grim with each detail. "Options?" she asked when Tom finished. "We could postpone the meeting, give ourselves a few weeks to rebuild the software properly. The investors fly back to Tokyo tomorrow afternoon. This is our only chance." Helena's voice was flat, controlled. "What else?" Tom glanced at Sam, clearly reluctant to suggest something that might make the situation worse. "Sam thinks we might be able to bypass the engine management system, run the prototype on manual controls. Helena's sharp eyes focused on Sam. Explain. Sam took a deep breath. The prototype has a backup system that was never removed from development. Basic engine controls that could let us start and run the motor without the main computer. It wouldn't have any of the advanced features, but it would prove that the fundamental engineering is sound. How long would this take? A few hours, maybe until dawn if we run into complications. Helena was quiet for a long moment, weighing options that all seemed to lead to failure. Finally, she nodded. Do it. I'll handle the investors' expectations. Tell them we're demonstrating the core engine technology rather than the complete hybrid system. As Helena left to make phone calls and adjust the morning's presentation, Sam and the engineering team began the delicate process of reconnecting the prototype's backup systems. It was like performing surgery on a patient who couldn't be anesthetized. Every connection had to be perfect, every wire had to be routed exactly right, or the entire engine could suffer permanent damage. The hidden diagnostic port became their lifeline, providing real-time feedback as they slowly brought the backup systems online. Jerry proved invaluable, his decades of experience with older mechanical systems complementing the engineer's knowledge of modern electronics. Fuel injection system is responding, Tom reported as dawn approached. Ignition timing looks good. Battery connections are stable. Sam wiped sweat from his forehead. They'd been working for 5 hours straight, fueled by coffee and determination. The prototype looked like a patient in intensive care, with diagnostic cables snaking everywhere and temporary connections holding critical systems together. Ready to try starting it? Sam asked. Everyone in Bay 7 held their breath as Tom turned the ignition key. For a moment, there was only the familiar electrical hum. Then, with a cough and a rumble, the prototype's engine came to life. It wasn't the whisper-smooth operation they'd achieved earlier, with the full computer system. The engine ran rougher, louder, less refined, but it ran. The fundamental engineering was sound, the core technology was viable, and Phoenix Motors had something to show the investors. It's beautiful, Jerry said, and this time Sam couldn't disagree. But their celebration was interrupted by the sound of voices in the corridor outside Bay 7. Helena Price was leading a group of men in expensive suits, the investors, who would decide Phoenix Motors' fate. They looked skeptical, impatient, like people who'd made this trip as a courtesy rather than a serious business consideration. Gentlemen, Helena said as she opened the door to Bay 7, I'd like you to meet the team that's been working all night to demonstrate our core engine technology. The lead investor, a stern-faced man with silver hair, approached the prototype with obvious skepticism. Ms. Price, we were told we'd be seeing a fully operational hybrid system. This looks like a development prototype. It is a development prototype, Helena replied smoothly, which is exactly why it's valuable. You're not just buying a finished product, you're buying the engineering capability that created it, the knowledge and expertise that can solve problems other companies can't even diagnose. She gestured toward Sam. This is Sam Rodriguez, one of our senior technicians. When a power surge corrupted the prototype software last night, Sam identified a solution that our computer diagnostics missed entirely. In 6 hours, he and his team rebuilt the engine's control systems from scratch. The investor looked Sam up and down, taking in the grease-stained work clothes and calloused hands. You're not an engineer? No, sir. I'm a mechanic, 15 years on the night shift. And you solved a problem that the engineering team couldn't. Sam glanced at Tom, who nodded encouragingly. Sometimes the old ways work better than the new ways. Sometimes you have to listen to what the engine is trying to tell you, instead of just reading what the computer says. The investor walked around the prototype, examining the temporary connections and backup systems. This is impressive work, but it's not what we came to see. We need to know that Phoenix Motors can produce market-ready vehicles, not just clever workarounds. Helena's jaw tightened, but her voice remained steady. With respect, sir, market-ready vehicles are built by people who understand clever workarounds. The automotive industry is full of companies that can follow specifications and implement existing technology. What makes Phoenix Motors valuable is our ability to solve problems that don't have specifications yet. The investor was about to respond when something unexpected happened. The prototype's engine, which had been running steadily for the past hour, suddenly smoothed out. The rough idle became a whisper-quiet purr, and all the diagnostic readings shifted to optimal levels. "What just happened?" the investor asked. Sam checked the diagnostic port, his eyes widening at what he saw. "The engine management system is coming back online. The software is rebuilding itself from the backup calibrations." Tom stared at his diagnostic screen in amazement. "That's impossible. Software doesn't repair itself." "This software does," Sam said with growing excitement. "Look at this. The system is learning from the manual calibrations we set up. It's using our workaround as a template to rebuild the original programming." The prototype was now running better than it had before the power surge, all systems integrated and optimized. The hybrid motors engaged seamlessly, the regenerative braking system activated, and the advanced efficiency features came online one by one. Helena Price smiled for the first time since the crisis began. "Gentlemen, what you're seeing is exactly why Phoenix Motors is worth your investment. Our people don't just solve problems, they create solutions that make the technology better than it was before." The lead investor walked over to Sam, extending his hand. "Mr. Rodriguez, that was remarkable work. How long have you been in engineering?" "I'm not in engineering, sir. I'm night shift maintenance." The investor looked confused, then turned to Helena. "Miss Price, why is your most talented problem solver working the night shift?" Helena's eyes met Sam's across the length of Bay 7, and in that moment, both of them understood that everything was about to change. The invisible man had been seen, and there was no going back to the shadows. "That," Helena said quietly, "is an excellent question." The call came at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, 3 days after the investor meeting. Sam had been asleep for exactly 4 hours when his phone rang, jarring him from dreams of Elena's college acceptance letter and the sound of engines purring to life. "Mr. Rodriguez, this is Patricia Webb, Miss Price's executive assistant. Miss Price would like to meet with you this afternoon at 2 p.m. in her office. Will that work with your schedule?" Sam sat up in bed, instantly awake. "Yes, ma'am. I'll be there." "Excellent. The executive offices are on the 4th floor of the administration building. Security will have a visitor's badge waiting for you." After hanging up, Sam sat on the edge of his bed, staring at Maria's wedding ring on his finger. In 15 years at Phoenix Motors, he'd never been above the 2nd floor. The executive offices were foreign territory, a world of polished marble and expensive furniture where decisions were made that affected thousands of lives. He showered carefully, put on his best sheer blue Oxford that Elena had given him for Father's Day and drove to the factory an hour early. The administration building looked different in daylight, imposing and corporate, rather than the familiar industrial landscape he knew from the night shift. Helena Price's office occupied a corner of the 4th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the factory complex below. Sam could see Bay 7 from here, where the prototype sat like a mechanical monument to the previous night's crisis and triumph. Helena stood behind her desk when Sam entered, wearing a charcoal business suit that probably cost more than Sam made in a month. But her expression was warm, almost relieved, as if she'd been looking forward to this conversation. "Mr. Rodriguez, thank you for coming. Please, sit down." The chairs in front of Helena's desk were leather, the kind that probably adjusted to 12 different positions and cost more than Sam's truck. He sat carefully, acutely aware of the contrast between his work clothes and the executive surroundings. "I'll get straight to the point," Helena said, settling into her own chair. "After watching you work the other night, I've been doing some research. 15 years with Phoenix Motors, spotless safety record, consistently high-performance evaluations from your supervisors. More importantly, 3 different times you've solved critical problems that stumped our engineering teams." Sam shifted uncomfortably. "I just listened to what the machines are trying to tell me, ma'am." "That's exactly what I'm talking about," Helena leaned forward, her eyes intense. Do you know what those investors said after they left Bay 7? No, ma'am. They said Phoenix Motors' greatest asset isn't our equipment or our patents or our market position. It's our institutional knowledge, the expertise that can't be programmed into a computer or learned from a textbook. They were specifically impressed by your diagnostic skills. Helena opened a folder on her desk and pulled out a formal document. I'm offering you the position of lead engineering technician, effective immediately. 40% salary increase, full benefits, day shift schedule. You'd be working directly with our development teams, helping bridge the gap between theoretical engineering and practical application. Sam stared at the document, a formal job offer letter with numbers that made his head spin. $45,000 a year, plus performance bonuses, plus health insurance that would actually cover Elena's medical expenses if she ever needed them. It was more money than he'd ever imagined making, enough to pay for Elena's college education without taking on crushing debt. Sam's voice caught. Ma'am, I don't know what to say. Say yes, Helena smiled. You've earned this, Mr. Rodriguez, more than earned it. But even as the opportunity settled into Sam's mind, another thought was taking shape, the night shift crew. Jerry, who trained half the supervisors in the factory but was being treated like an obsolete machine. Marcus Williams, 58 years old, with encyclopedic knowledge of hydraulic systems, counting down the days until his pension kicked in because he knew layoffs were coming. David Chen, the shift supervisor who'd been passed over for promotion 5 times because he didn't have a college degree. Miss Price, can I ask you something? Of course. What happens to the night shift when I leave? Jerry Williamson has been here 38 years. He knows more about precision machining than most of the day shift engineers. Marcus Williams can diagnose hydraulic problems just by listening to them. These men, they're not just doing maintenance, they're keeping 40 years of institutional knowledge alive. Helena's expression grew thoughtful. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that maybe the problem isn't just that I'm underutilized. Maybe the problem is that the whole night shift is underutilized. These men have decades of experience that's just being wasted on routine maintenance. Go on. Sam took a deep breath, knowing he was about to either make the smartest decision of his life or blow the opportunity completely. What if instead of just promoting me, you created a program that tapped into all that experience, something that paired older workers with younger engineers or with high school students who want to learn trades? Helena was quiet for a long moment, studying Sam with an expression he couldn't read. You're turning down the promotion. I'm asking if there's a way to accept it and still help the people who helped me. Mr. Rodriguez, do you understand what you're risking? This kind of opportunity doesn't come twice. I could fill this position with any of a dozen candidates who wouldn't hesitate to accept. Yes, ma'am, I understand. But I also understand that Jerry Williamson taught me half of what I know about engines. Marcus Williams showed me how to read hydraulic schematics when I was just starting out. If I take this promotion and leave them behind, I'm not just abandoning my crew, I'm abandoning the values that made me good at this job in the first place. Helena stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the factory floor below. You know, when I took this job 6 months ago, everyone told me that Phoenix Motors' biggest problem was outdated equipment and inefficient processes. But after watching you work the other night, I'm beginning to think our biggest problem is that we don't recognize the assets we already have. She turned back to Sam. Tell me more about this program you're envisioning. For the next hour, Sam outlined his ideas. A mentorship program that paired experienced workers with young people wanting to learn trades. Skills-sharing sessions where night shift veterans could teach their knowledge to day shift engineers. An apprenticeship system that gave high school graduates an alternative to expensive college programs while preserving decades of institutional knowledge. It's not just about keeping older workers employed, Sam explained. It's about creating a bridge between generations of knowledge. The young engineers know the latest technology, but they don't necessarily understand how that technology behaves in the real world. The older workers understand real-world applications, but they might not be familiar with the newest innovations. Put them together, and you get solutions that neither group could develop alone. Helena listened intently, occasionally asking questions about implementation details and cost projections. Sam found himself drawing on 15 years of observing how the factory actually worked versus how management thought it worked. This would require a significant investment, Helena said finally. Training facilities, equipment, administrative overhead. The board would need to see a clear return on investment. The return is problem-solving capability, Sam replied. How much did that corrupted software cost us in potential lost sales? How much do we spend on outside consultants when our own people could solve the problems if they were just given the chance? Helena returned to her desk and made several notes on a legal pad. I'm intrigued by your proposal, Mr. Rodriguez, but I need something more concrete than a philosophical argument. If I'm going to ask the board to fund a program like this, I need data, projections, a detailed implementation plan. How long do I have? 2 weeks. And Sam, Helena's use of his first name, caught his attention. I'm still offering you the lead engineering technician position, regardless of whether this apprenticeship program moves forward. Don't sacrifice your family's future for an uncertain experiment. Sam stood up, the job offer letter still in his hands. Can I take a few days to think about it? Of course, but don't think too long. As I mentioned, opportunities like this don't wait indefinitely. That evening, Sam sat at his kitchen table with Elena, explaining the offer and the choice he was facing. Elena listened quietly, occasionally asking questions, her expression growing more thoughtful as she understood the implications. Dad, this is incredible. $45,000 a year, that's enough for my college tuition and more. You could even move us out of this apartment, maybe get something with a backyard. But, Sam could hear the hesitation in her voice. But you're not going to take it, are you? Not the way they're offering it. Sam looked at his daughter, amazed once again by her insight. How do you know? Because you're Mum's husband and my father. You don't leave people behind when you have a chance to help them. Elena reached across the table and squeezed his hand. What are you thinking of proposing instead? Sam spent the next hour explaining his ideas for the apprenticeship program, watching Elena's face light up with understanding and excitement. Dad, this is brilliant. You're not just thinking about getting promoted, you're thinking about changing how the whole company works. Mom would be so proud. You think so? I know so. She always said the best solutions are the ones that help everyone, not just yourself. Elena paused, then smiled. Besides, I've been thinking about something myself. What if I didn't go to the expensive conservatory program? What if I looked into the community college music program and worked part-time to help with expenses? Elena, no. We've talked about this. Hear me out. If your apprenticeship program works, there might be opportunities for me to be involved, teaching younger students, helping with program coordination. I could still pursue music, but maybe in a way that also helps other people achieve their dreams. Sam stared at his daughter, recognizing Maria's generous spirit and practical wisdom in Elena's words. You'd really be willing to change your college plans? Dad, you taught me that the best dreams are the ones that include other people. If we can help Jerry and Marcus and all those other workers while still making sure I get a good education, isn't that better than just looking out for ourselves? That night, Sam called Jerry to ask if he'd be interested in helping develop a proposal for the apprenticeship program. Jerry's response was immediate and enthusiastic. Sam, I've been hoping for something like this for years. I've got so much knowledge in my head, and when I retire, it's all going to disappear unless someone writes it down or passes it on. Over the next week, Sam spent his days researching successful apprenticeship programs, his evenings developing curriculum ideas, and his night shifts talking to other workers about their skills and interests. The response was overwhelming, not just from the older workers who saw a chance to share their knowledge, but from younger employees who wanted to learn from experienced mentors. Marcus Williams, the hydraulics expert, volunteered to develop a training program for fluid power systems. David Chen offered to teach project management skills he'd learned from decades of coordinating shift work. Even some of the day-shift engineers expressed interest in learning practical applications from night-shift veterans. But the most surprising support came from an unexpected source, Helena Price's 17-year-old daughter, Sophia, who visited the factory one afternoon and immediately grasped the program's potential. "Ms. Rodriguez," she said, having insisted on the formal address despite being younger than Elena, "this apprenticeship program could be a model for other companies. Have you considered documenting the process so it could be replicated elsewhere?" Sam hadn't considered that possibility, but Sophia's suggestion opened up an entirely new dimension to the proposal. If Phoenix Motors could develop a successful apprenticeship program, they could license the methodology to other manufacturers, creating a new revenue stream while solving industry-wide problems. By the end of the 2 weeks, Sam had a 30-page proposal that outlined not just the apprenticeship program, but a comprehensive approach to knowledge transfer and workforce development. The document was professional, detailed, and ambitious, far beyond anything he'd ever attempted before. But as he prepared to present his alternative to Helena Price, Sam couldn't shake the feeling that he was gambling his family's future on an untested idea. The safe choice was to take the promotion, secure Elena's education, and let someone else worry about the night shift workers who were facing layoffs. The question was whether Sam Rodriguez had the courage to choose the harder path, knowing that failure would mean losing everything he'd worked 15 years to achieve. The answer would come tomorrow, in Helena Price's office, when Sam would either transform his life or throw away the best opportunity he'd ever been offered. Sam's hands were steady as he placed the 30-page proposal on Helena Price's desk, but his heart was hammering against his ribs. 2 weeks of research, planning, and soul-searching had led to this moment, the decision that would either transform Phoenix Motors or end his career in spectacular failure. Helena picked up the document, noting its weight and professional binding. "This is considerably more than I expected, Mr. Rodriguez. I wanted to be thorough, ma'am." She opened to the first page and began reading. Sam sat in silence, watching her expression for any hint of reaction. Helena was known for her poker face in business negotiations, but after several minutes, he caught the slight raise of her eyebrows that suggested genuine surprise. "You've outlined a 3-phase implementation plan," she said without looking up. "Starting with a pilot program of 6 mentor-apprentice pairs, expanding to facility-wide deployment, and eventually licensing the methodology to other manufacturers." She glanced at him over the document. "That's quite ambitious for someone who describes himself as just a mechanic." "I had help. Elena assisted with the research and formatting. Jerry Williamson provided technical expertise for the curriculum development. Sophia, your daughter, suggested the licensing component." "Sophia helped with this?" Helena's tone carried a mixture of pride and surprise. "She visited the factory last week and immediately understood the program's potential. Very bright young lady, ma'am." Helena continued reading, occasionally making notes in the margins. Sam tried to interpret her body language, the way she leaned forward during certain sections, the slight nod when she reached his cost-benefit analysis, the pause when she encountered the detailed implementation timeline. "Your financial projections are conservative," she said finally. "I'd rather underpromise and overdeliver than the reverse." "Smart approach." Helena closed the proposal and leaned back in her chair. "This is impressive work, Sam. Truly impressive. But I have to ask why? Why risk a guaranteed promotion for an experimental program that might never get approved?" Sam had been preparing for this question for 2 weeks, but now that it was here, the answer came from somewhere deeper than preparation. "Because 15 years ago, when I was new and scared and didn't know a hydraulic line from a fuel injector, Marcus Williams spent his lunch breaks teaching me to read schematics. Because Jerry Williamson showed me how to listen to an engine's complaints instead of just following diagnostic protocols. Because David Chen gave me overtime shifts when Elena needed medical care, even though it meant extra paperwork for him." Sam paused, collecting his thoughts. "These men, they didn't just teach me technical skills. They taught me that knowledge isn't worth anything unless you share it." that the best solutions come from people working together, not competing against each other. And you believe this apprenticeship program can institutionalize that kind of knowledge sharing? I believe it can preserve it. Right now, when Jerry retires, 38 years of precision machining expertise walks out the door with him. When Marcus gets laid off, we lose 4 decades of hydraulic systems knowledge. We're throwing away institutional wisdom because we don't have a system for capturing and transferring it. Helena opened the proposal again, flipping to a section near the back. Your pilot program pairs older workers with high school students rather than existing employees. Why that choice? 2 reasons. First, high school students don't have preconceived notions about how things should work. They're willing to learn from experience as well as textbooks. Second, we're creating pathways for young people who might not be able to afford college but still want skilled careers. Like your daughter? The question caught Sam off guard. Elena's situation is different. Is it? Elena is 17, academically gifted, and passionate about music, but she's also practical enough to understand financial constraints. I've spoken with her several times during her visits here. She strikes me as someone who would thrive in a program that combines practical skills with creative pursuits. Sam felt a moment of protective instinct. Elena has been accepted to Arizona State's jazz program. She's worked too hard to settle for something less. Who says she'd be settling? Helena's voice carried a challenge. What if this apprenticeship program included tracks for students interested in combining technical skills with other pursuits? Engineering students who want practical experience, business students who want to understand manufacturing, even music students who want to learn about acoustics and sound engineering. The idea was intriguing, but Sam remained cautious. That would significantly complicate the program structure. It would also significantly expand its impact and appeal. Helena made more notes in the margins. Sam, I'm going to be direct with you. This proposal is exactly the kind of innovative thinking Phoenix Motors needs, but it's also risky, expensive, and unproven. The board will have legitimate concerns about return on investment. What kind of concerns? Cost, primarily. Even your conservative projections require a significant upfront investment: training facilities, equipment, administrative overhead, mentor compensation. The board will want to know why we should spend money on experimental programs when we could use those resources to modernize equipment or reduce debt. Sam had anticipated this objection. Because modern equipment doesn't solve problems, people solve problems. The prototype crisis 3 weeks ago is a perfect example. We had the most advanced diagnostic equipment available, but it took human insight to identify the actual issue. That's a compelling argument, but it's still anecdotal. The board will want data, metrics, quantifiable outcomes. Which is why I'm proposing a small pilot program first. 6 mentor-apprentice pairs, minimal infrastructure requirements, carefully measured results. If it works, we expand it. If it doesn't, we've learned something valuable with limited investment. Helena was quiet for several minutes, reading through the proposal's implementation timeline. Finally, she looked up at Sam with an expression he couldn't quite read. I'm going to make you an offer, Mr. Rodriguez, but it's not the offer I originally had in mind. Sam's pulse quickened. Ma'am, I want you to develop this apprenticeship program. Full-time position, salary commensurate with program development responsibilities, complete autonomy over curriculum design and mentor selection. You'd report directly to me with authority to coordinate across all departments. That sounds like a bigger risk and a bigger opportunity than the lead engineering technician position, yes. Are you prepared for that level of responsibility? Sam thought about Elena's college acceptance letter, still tucked in his wallet like a talisman, about Jerry Williamson's decades of expertise facing obsolescence, about Marcus Williams counting down to pension eligibility because he feared layoffs, about all the young people in Phoenix who wanted skilled careers but couldn't afford traditional education. Yes, ma'am, I'm prepared. Good, because there are conditions. Helena's tone became businesslike. First, the pilot program has 6 months to demonstrate measurable results. If it doesn't show clear benefits by then, we terminate it and you return to your previous position. Second, you'll be working with our HR department to ensure compliance with all labor regulations and union agreements. Third, you'll present quarterly progress reports to the board of directors. I understand. Do you? Sam, this isn't just about creating a nice program for older workers. This is about proving that Phoenix Motors can innovate in ways that go beyond new products or manufacturing processes. If this apprenticeship program succeeds, it could become a model for the entire industry. If it fails, it reflects on both of us. The weight of responsibility was daunting, but Sam found himself energized rather than intimidated. When do we start? Immediately. I'm calling an all-hands meeting for tomorrow morning to announce the program and solicit applications for both mentors and apprentices. I want you there to explain the vision and answer questions. As Sam prepared to leave Helena's office, she called his name one more time. Sam, about Elena's college plans. Has she considered applying for our new educational partnership program? What partnership program? Helena smiled. The one we're going to create as part of this apprenticeship initiative. Partnerships with local colleges and universities that allow students to combine traditional academics with practical experience. Elena could pursue her music degree while also learning sound engineering, acoustics, or business management, full tuition assistance for program participants. Sam stared at Helena, understanding that she'd been thinking several steps ahead throughout their entire conversation. You planned this all along. I planned to help talented people achieve their potential while solving business problems. The details were negotiable. Helena extended her hand. Welcome to your new career, Mr. Rodriguez. I hope you're ready to change how this company thinks about its most valuable asset. That evening, Sam sat with Elena at their kitchen table. The apprenticeship program contract spread between them, alongside her college acceptance letter. Both documents represented futures, one certain but limited, the other uncertain but expansive. So I could study music and learn sound engineering at the same time? Elena asked, tracing the partnership program details with her finger. If the program gets approved and the partnerships get established, yes. But Elena, there are no guarantees. This could all fall apart in 6 months. Elena was quiet for a moment, studying both documents. Dad, do you remember what Mom used to say about taking risks? That the biggest risk is not taking any risks at all. She also used to say that the best opportunities are the ones that help other people while helping yourself. Elena looked up at Sam with Maria's determined expression. I want to be part of this program, not just as a participant, but as someone who helps make it work. You'd be willing to give up Arizona State. I'd be willing to defer Arizona State to help create something that could help dozens of other students. If this apprenticeship program works, it could change how people think about education and careers. That's worth postponing my own plans for. That night, Sam called Jerry Williamson and Marcus Williams to share the news. Both men were eager to participate as mentors, and both had specific ideas about young people they wanted to work with. You know what this means, don't you? Jerry said over the phone. This means everything we've learned over the past 30+ years doesn't die with us. It gets passed on to people who'll use it to solve problems we haven't even thought of yet. Marcus was more direct. Sam, you just gave us all a second chance. A chance to matter again, to contribute something beyond just keeping the lights on. I don't know how to thank you for that. As Sam hung up the phone, he realized that his handwritten proposal had become something much larger than he'd originally envisioned. It wasn't just about preserving institutional knowledge or creating job opportunities for young people. It was about proving that experience and wisdom had value in a world that increasingly favored youth and innovation over depth and understanding. The apprenticeship program would either validate that belief or prove it naive. Either way, Sam Rodriguez was about to find out what happened when an invisible man stepped fully into the light and tried to change the world around him. The pilot program would begin in 2 weeks, with 6 carefully selected mentor-apprentice pairs. Among them would be Jerry Williamson and Carlos Mendoza, a 17-year-old whose family had immigrated from Guatemala and who showed exceptional aptitude for precision work. Marcus Williams would be paired with Elena Rodriguez, creating a dynamic that would test the program's flexibility and Sam's ability to balance personal and professional responsibilities. But all of that was still in the future. Tonight, Sam Rodriguez fell asleep for the first time in months without worrying about Elena's college expenses or his own job security. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight he could rest in the knowledge that he'd chosen the harder path and that sometimes the harder path was the only one worth taking. 6 months into the apprenticeship program, Sam's makeshift office in the converted storage room had become the unofficial heart of Phoenix Motor's most ambitious experiment. The walls were covered with progress charts, curriculum outlines, and photos of mentor-apprentice pairs working together on various projects. What had started as a leap of faith was beginning to show tangible results, though not without significant growing pains. The morning sun streamed through the small window as Sam reviewed the latest progress reports. Jerry Williamson and Carlos Mendoza had exceeded every expectation. The 17-year-old immigrant had absorbed Jerry's precision machining knowledge with an enthusiasm that reminded Sam of his own early days at the factory. Carlos had already identified and corrected 3 inefficiencies in the production line, saving the company an estimated $8,000 in wasted materials. Marcus Williams's partnership with Elena had proven more complex. Elena brought a musician's ear for mechanical rhythms and patterns, often detecting problems in hydraulic systems by sound alone. But the arrangement created uncomfortable dynamics for Sam, who found himself struggling to maintain professional objectivity when his daughter was involved. "Dad, you're hovering again," Elena said, appearing in his office doorway with a hydraulic component in her hands. She was wearing safety glasses and work gloves, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail that made her look older than her 17 years. "I'm not hovering. I'm monitoring program progress." "You're hovering. Marcus sent me to show you this." Elena held up the componenta pressure regulator that controlled fluid flow in the factory's main hydraulic system. "We found micro-fractures in the housing that would have caused a complete system failure within the next few weeks." Sam examined the part, noting the hairline cracks that would be invisible to casual inspection. "How did you spot this?" "The sound was wrong. Not obvious, just a slight harmonic distortion when the system cycled. Marcus taught me to listen for frequency variations that indicate metal fatigue." This was exactly what Sam had hoped the program would accomplish: the transfer of intuitive knowledge that couldn't be captured in technical manuals. Marcus had developed his diagnostic ear over 40 years of working with hydraulic systems. Elena had absorbed that knowledge in 6 months and applied it with fresh perspective. "That's excellent work, Mija, both of you. There's something else." Elena's expression grew serious. "Sophia Price visited the program yesterday. She wants to do a documentary about the apprenticeship for her senior project." Sam felt a familiar tightness in his chest. Sophia Price was Helena's 17-year-old daughter, brilliant and driven like her mother, but with a journalist's instinct for uncovering stories that made people uncomfortable. "What kind of documentary?" "She wants to follow several mentor-apprentice pairs through their daily work, interview them about their experiences, document the knowledge transfer process. She thinks it could help other companies understand how to implement similar programs." The idea was both exciting and terrifying. Documentary coverage could provide valuable publicity for the program, potentially attracting interest from other manufacturers and justifying continued investment. But it would also mean scrutiny, external evaluation, and the possibility that any problems or failures would be magnified. "What did you tell her?" "That she'd need to clear it with you and her mother." "But Dad, I think we should do it. The program is working. People should see what's possible when companies invest in their workers' knowledge instead of just treating them as replaceable parts." Before Sam could respond, his phone rang. Helena Price's number appeared on the display. "Sam, I need to see you in my office immediately. We have a situation." 20 minutes later, Sam sat across from Helena's desk, studying her grim expression. Spread before her were documents he recognized: efficiency reports, productivity analyses, and cost-benefit calculations. The board received the quarterly review of the apprenticeship program, Helena said without preamble. The results are mixed. Mixed how? Positive outcomes include the cost savings from Carlos's production line improvements and the early detection of potential equipment failures. The mentor feedback has been overwhelmingly positive, and apprentice retention is 100%. That sounds encouraging. It is, but there are concerns. Helena picked up one of the reports. The program is running 18% over budget due to equipment purchases and facility modifications. Administrative overhead is higher than projected because of the individualized attention each pair requires. And some board members question whether the knowledge being transferred is actually valuable or just obsolete practices being perpetuated. Sam felt his chest tighten. What kind of obsolete practices? Jerry Williamson's insistence on manual measurements for components that have automated quality control systems, Marcus Williams' preference for mechanical solutions over computerized alternatives, David Chen's emphasis on personal relationships over efficiency metrics. Those aren't obsolete practices, they're verification methods that catch problems the automated systems miss. I agree with you, Sam, but the board sees inefficiency. They see older workers teaching younger ones to distrust modern technology instead of embracing it. Helena stood up and walked to her window, looking down at the factory floor where apprentices and mentors were working side by side. There's something else. 3 of our competitors have approached board members about acquiring Phoenix Motors. The offers are substantial enough to provide excellent returns for investors and generous severance packages for employees. Are you considering selling? The board is considering it. If we sell, the apprenticeship program becomes irrelevant. The new owners would implement their own training systems and probably eliminate most of the current workforce. Sam stared at Helena, understanding the implications. How long do we have? The board meets next month to discuss the acquisition offers. If I can demonstrate clear, quantifiable benefits from the apprenticeship program, I might be able to argue for continued independence. If not, she shrugged. What would constitute clear, quantifiable benefits? Significant cost savings, measurable productivity improvements, or breakthrough innovations that justify the investment. Something that proves the program creates value that couldn't be achieved through conventional training methods. Sam's mind raced through possibilities. The program had achieved modest successes, but nothing dramatic enough to sway a board focused on quarterly profits. What if we accelerated the timeline? Instead of waiting for gradual improvements, what if we tackled a major challenge that demonstrated the program's potential? What kind of challenge? The efficiency problems in Building C day shift has been struggling with recurring equipment failures and production bottlenecks for months. What if we assigned mentor-apprentice teams to identify and solve those problems? Helena considered this. Building C has been a persistent headache. If the apprenticeship teams could significantly improve operations there, it would definitely get the board's attention. But it would also be a high-risk test. If we fail, it confirms the board's doubts about the program. Sam, at this point, playing it safe is the riskiest strategy we could choose. The program needs a decisive success to survive. That afternoon, Sam gathered the 6 mentor-apprentice pairs in the factory's small conference room. The group had developed a comfortable dynamic over the past 6 months. Jerry and Carlos comparing precision techniques with Marcus and Elena, while other pairs shared discoveries and insights from their respective specialties. "We have an opportunity," Sam began, then corrected himself. "Actually, we have a challenge that's also an opportunity." He explained the situation with Building C, the board's concerns about the program, and the need for a dramatic demonstration of the apprenticeship model's value. The room was quiet as the implications sank in. "How long do we have?" Jerry asked. 4 weeks until the board meeting. Carlos whistled softly. Building C has been a problem area for over a year. Day shift engineers haven't been able to solve it with all their computer diagnostics and technical resources. Which is exactly why this could work, Elena said. We're not approaching it the same way they did. We're combining institutional knowledge with fresh perspectives. Marcus nodded slowly. The hydraulic systems in Building C are 20 years old. I installed half of them myself before computer controls were integrated. I know where the weak points are. And I've been tracking the electrical problems, added Sarah Mitchell, a 48-year-old electrician paired with 18-year-old Jessica Chen. The power distribution system wasn't designed for the current equipment load. Over the next hour, the group developed a comprehensive approach to diagnosing Building C's problems. Each mentor-apprentice pair would focus on their area of expertise: mechanical systems, hydraulics, electrical distribution, quality control, workflow optimization, and equipment maintenance. They would spend 2 weeks gathering data and developing solutions, then implement their recommendations during a coordinated shutdown weekend. This is ambitious, Sam warned. If we fail, the program probably gets terminated. Everyone understand the stakes? We understand, Jerry said, speaking for the group. We also understand that this is what the program was designed, for proving that experience and wisdom can solve problems that pure technology can't. As the meeting broke up, Elena approached Sam privately. Dad, I want to document this process. Sophia's documentary idea, what if we use it to record our attempt to solve Building C? Either way, it turns out, people should see what we tried to accomplish. Sam looked at his daughter, recognizing Maria's courage and determination in her expression. You're sure about this? I'm sure that if we're going to fail, we should fail trying to do something meaningful. And if we're going to succeed, people should understand how we did it. That evening, Sam called Helena to propose the documentary component. Her response surprised him. Sophia suggested the same thing this afternoon. She wants to create a complete record of the process interviews, technical explanations, problem-solving sessions, implementation challenges. Win or lose, it could be valuable for future training purposes. And if we lose, then at least we'll have an honest record of an ambitious attempt. Sometimes that's more valuable than cautious success. 3 days later, Sophia Price arrived at the factory with professional video equipment and a detailed plan for documenting the Building C project. At 17, she had her mother's focus and intelligence, but also a creative vision that transformed technical problem-solving into compelling storytelling. I want to show people something they don't usually see, she explained to the mentor, apprentice teams. The moment when experience meets innovation, when wisdom guides technology instead of being replaced by it. As the cameras began rolling, Sam realized that the apprenticeship program had evolved beyond his original vision. It was no longer just about preserving institutional knowledge or providing career opportunities for young people. It had become a test of whether human insight and technological capability could work together to solve problems that neither could address alone. The success or failure of that test would determine not just the program's future, but the future of Phoenix Motors itself. And in 4 weeks, Sam Rodriguez would learn whether his gamble on human potential would pay off or cost him everything he'd worked to build. But first, they had to solve the mystery of building car challenge that had stumped engineers, frustrated managers, and threatened to prove that some problems were simply too complex for any solution, no matter how innovative or well-intentioned. The corporate efficiency report arrived on a grey Thursday morning, delivered by courier to Helena's office with the kind of formal protocol that suggested bad news. Sam was reviewing Building C diagnostics when his phone buzzed with Helena's urgent summons. The document, waiting on her desk, was bound in corporate blue, emblazoned with the logo of Hartwell, Associates Management Consultants, whose reputation for ruthless cost-cutting preceded them like a storm front. Helena's expression was carefully neutral, but Sam could read the tension in her shoulders. The board commissioned an independent evaluation of the apprenticeship program, she said without preamble. This is their report. Sam picked up the document, noting its weight 63 pages of analysis, charts, and recommendations. The executive summary was visible through the transparent cover page, and the highlighted conclusion made his stomach drop. Immediate termination recommended due to cost inefficiencies and questionable return on investment. "How bad is it?" Sam asked, though he dreaded the answer. "Read page 15, the section on resource allocation." Sam flipped to the designated page and found a detailed breakdown of program costs versus measurable outcomes. The numbers were presented with clinical precision: administrative overhead, equipment purchases, facility modifications, mentor compensation, lost productivity during training sessions. Against these costs, the consultants had measured only quantifiable savings: the $8,000 from Carlos's production improvements, estimated maintenance savings from early problem detection, reduced turnover among participating employees. "They're treating this like a simple cost-benefit calculation," Sam said. "Because that's exactly what it is, from their perspective." The board hired Hartwell to evaluate whether the apprenticeship program generates more value than it consumes. According to their analysis, it doesn't. Sam read further, finding section after section that reduced human knowledge and experience to spreadsheet entries. Jerry Williamson's 38 years of expertise were valued only in terms of immediate cost savings. Elena's ability to detect mechanical problems through sound analysis was dismissed as anecdotal and unreliable compared to systematic diagnostic protocols. "They're measuring the wrong things," Sam said, frustration creeping into his voice. "Are they, Sam? I believe in this program. I believe in what you're trying to accomplish. But I'm also responsible to shareholders who invested in Phoenix Motors based on promises of profitability and growth. If I can't demonstrate clear financial benefits, I can't justify continued investment." Helena walked to her window, looking down at Building C, where mentor-apprentice teams were conducting their comprehensive analysis. "The board meets in 2 weeks. If the Building C project doesn't produce dramatic results, they'll implement Hartwell's recommendations immediately, which are: terminate the apprenticeship program, offer early retirement packages to workers over 55, implement standard automation protocols for all production processes, reduce workforce by approximately 30%. Sam felt the walls of Helena's office closing in around him. The efficiency report represented everything he'd feared about corporate thinking: the reduction of human beings to cost centers, the elimination of anything that couldn't be easily quantified or measured. "Helena, if they implement these recommendations, Phoenix Motors loses 4 decades of institutional knowledge overnight. Jerry, Marcus, David Chenthy's men know things about manufacturing that can't be replaced by computer programs or automation systems. I know that, you know that, but the board sees overhead costs and productivity metrics. They see competitors who operate with lower labor costs and higher profit margins. What about the investors who were impressed by the prototype repair? They understood the value of human expertise. That was 6 months ago. The investors who matter now are the ones considering acquisition offers. They're more interested in asset value than operational philosophy." Sam sat in silence, absorbing the implications. The apprenticeship program had become a symbol of 2 different approaches to business: one that valued human knowledge and experience, another that prioritized measurable efficiency and cost reduction. The Building C project would determine which philosophy prevailed. "There's something else," Helena said quietly. "Sophia's documentary has attracted attention from industry publications. If the program succeeds, we'll have significant publicity highlighting our innovative approach to workforce development. If it fails, we fail very publicly." Exactly. The stakes couldn't be higher. That afternoon, Sam gathered the mentor-apprentice teams in Building C for a progress review. The space hummed with activity as pairs worked on different aspects of the facility's chronic problems. Jerry and Carlos had mapped every piece of precision equipment, identifying maintenance issues that hadn't been addressed in months. Marcus and Elena had created a comprehensive hydraulic systems analysis that revealed design flaws dating back to the building's original construction. "Status report," Sam called, and the teams gathered around a whiteboard covered with diagrams, timelines, and problem classifications. "We've identified 17 separate issues contributing to production inefficiencies," Jerry reported. "Some are simple clogged filters, misaligned equipment, worn components. Others are systemic problems that require coordinated solutions." Marcus pointed to a hydraulic schematic taped to the wall. The pressure distribution system was never properly balanced. When they added new equipment 5 years ago, they didn't recalculate load requirements. The system has been operating at 95% capacity ever since, which explains the recurring failures, Elena added. "The hydraulic pumps are working too hard, components are wearing out faster than expected, and there's no safety margin for peak demand periods." Sarah Mitchell had identified electrical problems that compounded the mechanical issues. Power distribution circuits are overloaded. During peak production periods, voltage drops cause equipment to operate outside normal parameters. That creates stress on mechanical systems and increases failure rates. Sam studied the analysis, impressed by both its thoroughness and its complexity. The teams had uncovered interconnected problems that explained years of mysterious breakdowns and productivity losses. But the solutions would require coordinated implementation, significant parts inventory, and careful timing to minimize production disruption. "How long to implement fixes?" Sam asked. "If we can get a full weekend shutdown, we can address the major issues," Jerry said. "The precision equipment realignment alone will take 12 hours. Hydraulic system rebalancing needs another 8 hours. Electrical work has to be done with power completely off." "We're talking about 48 hours of intensive work," Marcus added. "All teams coordinating simultaneously, no room for error. Everything has to work the first time." Sam looked around at the faces of his apprentices and mentors. These people had invested 6 months in proving that experience and innovation could work together. Now they were proposing to stake everything on one weekend of coordinated problem-solving. "The board meets Monday morning," Sam said. "If we're going to do this, it has to be this weekend." Elena raised her hand tentatively. "Dad, what if we fail? What if we miss something, or the solutions don't work, or we make things worse? Then we fail attempting something worthwhile. But if we don't try, the program fails anyway." Carlos spoke up from the back of the group. "Mr. Rodriguez, 6 months ago, I was just another high school kid with no prospects for skilled work. Jerry taught me precision measurement techniques that most college-trained engineers don't understand. If this program gets terminated, kids like me lose opportunities we never would have had otherwise." "That's exactly why we have to succeed," Jerry said firmly. "Not just for us, but for everyone who comes after us." Sophia Price, who had been quietly documenting the discussion, stepped forward. "I've been recording this process for 3 weeks now. I've seen what you've accomplished, how you work together, the knowledge that's being transferred. Win or lose, people need to understand what's possible when companies invest in their workers instead of just their technology." That evening, Sam received approval for the weekend shutdown 48 hours, during which Building C would cease all production while the apprenticeship teams implemented their comprehensive solution. Helena had argued the case to the board, framing it as a final test of the program's viability. "If they succeed," she told the board members, "we have proof that our approach to workforce development creates measurable value. If they fail, we implement Hartwell's recommendations immediately." Friday night, as Sam prepared for the most important weekend of his career, Elena found him in the kitchen, reviewing technical drawings and parts inventories. "Dad, I need to tell you something." "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I just want you to know that I'm proud of what you've built here. This program, it's not just about teaching technical skills. It's about treating people with dignity, recognizing that experience has value, creating opportunities for young people who might otherwise be overlooked." Elena sat down beside him, her expression serious. Mom would be proud too. You remember what she used to say about Maria's saxophone? Sam looked up from his paperwork. Maria's saxophone, Elena's inheritance from her mother, still sat in its case in Elena's bedroom, waiting for the day when college expenses would no longer compete with musical dreams. She said it represented the difference between making noise and making music, that the saxophone was just an instrument until someone with knowledge and passion brought it to life. That's what this apprenticeship program is, Elena said. The tools and equipment are just instruments. Jerry and Marcus and the other mentors, they're bringing them to life by sharing their knowledge and passion. And what about your music? What about Arizona State and the jazz program? Elena smiled. Music will always be there, Dad, but opportunities to change how people think about work and education, those don't come along very often. I'd rather spend my time helping create something that matters than pursuing something just for myself. That night, Sam called each of the mentor-apprentice pairs to confirm their readiness for the weekend ahead. The conversations were brief but intense, everyone understanding that their collective future depended on 2 days of flawless execution. Jerry Williamson, at 62, would be working alongside 17-year-old Carlos to realign precision equipment that hadn't been properly calibrated in years. Marcus Williams and Elena would rebalance hydraulic systems that had been operating on the edge of failure. Sarah Mitchell and Jessica Chen would rewire electrical circuits during a complete power shutdown. If everything went according to plan, Building C would emerge from the weekend operating more efficiently than it had in 5 years. If something went wrong, if they missed a critical component, made a calculation error, or simply ran out of time, the apprenticeship program would end, taking with it the dreams and futures of everyone who had believed in Sam's vision. Saturday morning arrived grey and cold, with the kind of autumn weather that made Phoenix feel almost seasonal. Sam arrived at the factory before dawn, finding that most of the teams had beaten him there. Building C was already bustling with activity as apprentices and mentors began the most ambitious collaborative project any of them had ever attempted. The corporate efficiency report sat on Sam's desk like an accusation, 63 pages of analysis that reduced human knowledge to cost calculations. By Monday morning, everyone would know whether Hartwell associates had been right to recommend termination, or whether Sam Rodriguez and his apprenticeship program could prove that some things wisdom, experience, and the patient transfer of knowledge from one generation to the next were worth more than any spreadsheet could measure. The weekend had gone flawlessly. By Sunday evening, Building C hummed with an efficiency that hadn't been seen in 5 years. Production line speeds had increased by 12%, equipment failure rates had dropped to near zero, and energy consumption had decreased by 18%. The mentor-apprentice teams had achieved everything they'd promised, and more. Monday morning found Sam in Helena's office, surrounded by performance metrics that told the story of an unqualified success. The Building C transformation had generated quantifiable benefits that even the most skeptical board member couldn't ignore. Projected annual savings of over $300,000, increased production capacity, and dramatically improved equipment reliability. This is exactly what we needed, Helena said, reviewing the weekend's results. The board meeting is in 3 hours. These numbers prove conclusively that the apprenticeship program creates measurable value. Sam should have felt triumphant. Instead, he felt uneasy in a way he couldn't quite articulate. The success was real, the benefits were documented, but something about Helena's tone suggested complications he hadn't anticipated. "There's something else, isn't there?" Sam asked. Helena's expression grew somber. "There is. Sam, I need you to understand that the board's interest in the apprenticeship program goes beyond Phoenix Motors. The success you've demonstrated has implications that extend far beyond our company." "What kind of implications?" 3 major automotive manufacturers have approached the board about licensing the apprenticeship methodology. They want to implement similar programs in their facilities, using our model as a template. This was potentially great news validation that the program had broader applications and could generate additional revenue for Phoenix Motors. But Helena's tone suggested otherwise. That sounds like an opportunity. It would be, under normal circumstances. But Sam, there's something about the board's long-term strategy that you need to understand. Helena opened a file folder and removed a document that Sam had never seen before. The board's decision to approve the apprenticeship program wasn't just about improving Phoenix Motors' operations. It was part of a larger plan to position the company for acquisition. Sam stared at the Documenta strategic planning report dated 6 months earlier, before the apprenticeship program had even been proposed. The language was dense corporate jargon, but the implications were clear. Phoenix Motors was being prepared for sale, and the apprenticeship program was intended to increase the company's value to potential buyers. "You knew this all along?" Sam asked quietly. "I knew the board was exploring options. I didn't know they'd already decided to sell." Helena's voice carried a mixture of frustration and resignation. The apprenticeship program's success has accelerated their timeline. They're now actively negotiating with 3 different buyers. What happens to the program if the company is sold? That depends on who buys us. 2 of the potential buyers see the apprenticeship program as a valuable asset, something they want to replicate in their other facilities. The 3rd buyer sees it as an unnecessary expense that would be eliminated immediately after acquisition. Sam felt the ground shifting beneath his feet. Everything he'd worked to build, all the relationships and knowledge transfers, and carefully developed trust, could disappear overnight based on corporate decisions made in boardrooms far from the factory floor. Which buyer is most likely to win? The one who sees the program as an expense. They're offering the highest purchase price because they plan to implement significant cost reductions immediately after closing. The irony was devastating. The apprenticeship program's success had made Phoenix Motors more attractive to buyers, but the most attractive buyer was the one most likely to destroy everything the program had accomplished. "Helena, there has to be something we can do, some way to protect the program and the people who've invested in it." "There might be, but it would require a decision that affects both of us personally." Helena walked to her window, looking down at the factory floor where apprentices and mentors were already implementing the lessons learned during the Building C project. "The board has made me an offer, Sam. If I agree to stay on as CEO under the new ownership, I can negotiate protections for key programs and personnel. The apprenticeship program would be guaranteed funding for at least 3 years. That sounds like good news." "It would be, except that staying means agreeing to eliminate 30% of the workforce over the next 18 months. The apprenticeship program would be protected, but most of the people it was designed to help would be laid off anyway." Sam absorbed this information, understanding that Helena was facing an impossible choice between protecting a few dozen people in the apprenticeship program and preserving jobs for hundreds of other workers. What if you refuse their offer? Then they bring in their own management team, eliminate the apprenticeship program immediately, and implement layoffs that affect 40% of the workforce instead of 30%. The trap was elegant in its cruelty. The apprenticeship program's success had created leverage that the board was using to force difficult decisions. Helena could save the program by sacrificing other workers, or she could refuse to cooperate and watch everything be destroyed anyway. "There's a 3rd option," Sam said slowly. "What if we don't let them buy the company?" Helena looked at him with an expression that mixed hope and skepticism. "Sam, Phoenix Motors is a publicly traded company. If the board accepts an acquisition offer, individual shareholders can't prevent the sale. But they can make it expensive. They can create complications that reduce the company's attractiveness to buyers." "What are you suggesting?" Sam had been thinking about this possibility since Helena first mentioned acquisition offers months ago. What if the apprenticeship program goes public? What if we document every aspect of its success and make it available to other companies without licensing fees? Helena stared at him. "You want to give away the methodology that makes Phoenix Motors valuable to potential buyers. I want to make it impossible for anyone to monopolize. If the apprenticeship model becomes public domain, buyers can't acquire Phoenix Motors just to control access to it." That would significantly reduce the company's acquisition value, which might discourage buyers who are only interested in asset stripping. The companies that want to buy Phoenix Motors for its productive capacity and workforce would still be interested, but at lower prices that reflect actual operational value rather than speculative intellectual property value. Helena was quiet for several minutes, considering the implications. This is incredibly risky, Sam. If we release the apprenticeship methodology publicly, and it doesn't discourage acquisition, we've given away our most valuable asset for nothing. But if it works, we preserve the program and protect the workforce. It's also career suicide for both of us. The board would never forgive a decision that deliberately reduced shareholder value. Sam thought about Jerry Williamson, 62 years old and facing potential layoffs after 38 years of loyal service. About Carlos Mendoza, 17 years old and finally seeing a path towards skilled employment. About Elena, who had deferred her college dreams to help build something that might change how companies thought about their workers. Helena, 6 months ago, you asked me why I was willing to risk a guaranteed promotion for an experimental program. I told you it was because the people who taught me believed that knowledge isn't worth anything unless you share it. I remember. This is the same choice, just bigger. We can try to preserve the apprenticeship program by making it exclusive property of whoever buys Phoenix Motors. Or we can preserve its spirit by making it available to anyone who wants to help workers develop their potential. Helena returned to her desk and picked up the strategic planning report. If we do this, we have to do it today. The board meeting is in 2 hours. Once they vote to accept an acquisition offer, it becomes much harder to influence the outcome. What would we need to do? Document everything: curriculum outlines, training methodologies, implementation guidelines, assessment protocols. Create a comprehensive manual that any company could use to develop their own apprenticeship program. How long would that take? If we had Elena and Sophia working on it, along with input from all the mentor-apprentice pairs, we could have a basic manual completed within a week. But we'd need to announce our intentions at today's board meeting to have any impact on the acquisition negotiations. Sam looked out at the factory floor, where the people who had trusted him with their futures were continuing to work and learn and build something meaningful together. Let's do it. Helena reached for her phone. I'm calling an emergency meeting with the mentor-apprentice teams. If we're going to do this, everyone needs to understand what we're proposing and why. An hour later, the small conference room was packed with apprentices, mentors, and family members who had been drawn into the program's extended community. Sophia Price had her camera ready, understanding that whatever happened next would be a crucial part of her documentary. Helena presented the situation clearly and without sugarcoating. The board's plan to sell the company, the threat to the apprenticeship program, and the proposal to release the methodology publicly as a way of protecting its principles, if not its specific implementation. This is a big decision, Helena concluded. If we do this, some of you might lose your jobs anyway. The program might be terminated regardless of our efforts to preserve it. But if we don't try, we're guaranteed to lose everything we've built together. Jerry Williamson was the first to speak. Ms. Price, 6 months ago, most of us thought we were just counting time until retirement or layoffs. This program gave us purpose again, made us feel like our knowledge and experience mattered. If sharing that knowledge with other companies helps other workers in other places, then that's what we should do. Carlos nodded enthusiastically. The apprenticeship program changed my life. If we can help it change other people's lives too, even if it means we don't get to control it, isn't that better than letting it die? Elena raised her hand. I'd like to help document the program, and I think we should include personal stories, not just technical procedures. People need to understand the human impact, not just the operational benefits. Marcus Williams, who had been quietly listening to the discussion, finally spoke. I've been thinking about legacy lately. What do we leave behind when we're gone? If we keep this program secret, our legacy is limited to the people in this room. If we share it openly, our legacy could help workers everywhere. The vote was unanimous. Every apprentice, every mentor, every family member present agreed to document and release the apprenticeship methodology as public domain information. Helena looked around the room at the faces of people who had just voted to give away their most valuable creation in order to preserve its integrity. I need you to understand what you've just decided. By choosing to make this program public, you're prioritizing its principles over its profitability. That's admirable, but it's also going to make some very powerful people very angry. Sam stood up, feeling the weight of leadership in a way he'd never experienced before. Then we'd better make sure we're ready for whatever comes next. As the meeting broke up and people began planning how to document 6 months of knowledge transfer and relationship building, Sam realized that the apprenticeship program had evolved beyond his original vision in ways he never could have anticipated. It had started as an effort to preserve institutional knowledge and create opportunities for young workers. Now it was becoming a statement about values, a declaration that some things human dignity, the patient transfer of wisdom, the belief that every person has something valuable to contribute were more important than profit margins or shareholder returns. The board meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. By then, Helena would either have to announce Phoenix Motors' commitment to making the apprenticeship program public domain, or watch the company be sold to buyers who saw workers as expendable resources rather than valuable assets. Either way, Sam Rodriguez and everyone who had believed in his vision were about to discover whether choosing principles over profit was an act of noble sacrifice or strategic suicide. The weekend that followed Helena's announcement to the board was unlike anything Phoenix Motors had ever experienced. Word of the apprenticeship program's impending public release had spread through the factory like wildfire, creating an atmosphere of urgency and determination that transformed the entire facility into a documentation center. Sam arrived at the factory on Saturday morning to find cars filling the parking lot, not just the vehicles of scheduled workers, but family members, retired employees, and even competitors' workers who had heard about the project and wanted to contribute. The small conference room that had hosted the original apprenticeship meetings was now the nerve center of an unprecedented knowledge-sharing initiative. Elena and Sophia Price had spent Friday night creating a comprehensive outline for what they were calling the Open Source Apprenticeship Manual. The document would include technical curricula, relationship building strategies, assessment protocols, and most importantly, the personal stories that gave the program its human dimension. We need to capture everything, Elena explained to the assembled volunteers. Not just what works, but why it works. Not just the procedures, but the principles behind them. Jerry Williamson had appointed himself chief historian, interviewing every mentor and apprentice pair about their specific experiences. His legal pad was covered with notes about breakthrough moments, unexpected discoveries, and the subtle interpersonal dynamics that made knowledge transfer effective. The technical stuff is important, Jerry said, addressing a group of retired machinists who had volunteered to help with documentation. But what really matters is trust. You can't transfer 40 years of experience to someone who doesn't trust that you're genuinely trying to help them succeed. Marcus Williams was working with Elena to create multimedia documentation of diagnostic techniques that couldn't be easily explained in writing. They had set up a video station in Building C, where they demonstrated the process of listening to hydraulic systems, feeling for vibrations that indicated impending failures, and reading the subtle signs that experienced technicians learned to recognize instinctively. This is what gets lost when companies rely only on computer diagnostics. Marcus explained to Sophia's camera, machines can measure precise values, but they can't interpret the story those values tell about a system's health and history. The workers' union charter, hastily drafted but powerfully written, had become the philosophical foundation for the documentation project. The charter wasn't just about workplace rights or compensation issues. It was a declaration of principles about the inherent dignity of skilled work and the responsibility to pass knowledge from one generation to the next. Every worker has something valuable to teach, the charter read. Every young person deserves access to meaningful career opportunities. Every company benefits from the accumulated wisdom of its experienced employees. These principles are not negotiable, regardless of market conditions or shareholder demands. Sam found himself moving between documentation stations, marveling at the energy and commitment of people who were essentially working for free to preserve something they believed in. The scene reminded him of old-fashioned barn raisings, where entire communities would come together to build something that benefited everyone. But the weekend's most important work was happening in Helena's office, where she was making phone calls that would determine whether their documentation efforts would have any practical impact. The board's reaction to her announcement had been swift and predictable fury at her sabotage of the acquisition negotiations, followed by threats to terminate both her and the apprenticeship program immediately. They can't legally prevent us from releasing information about training methodologies we developed, Helena explained to Sam during a brief break from her negotiations. But they can make our lives very difficult if they choose to. What are they threatening? Immediate termination for insubordination, legal action for breach of fiduciary duty, blacklisting that would make it impossible for either of us to find comparable positions elsewhere. Are you having second thoughts? Helena looked out her window at the parking lot full of volunteers, then at the factory floor where apprentices and mentors were continuing their work despite the uncertainty surrounding their future. No, if anything, seeing this response has convinced me we're doing the right thing. The most encouraging development was the response from other companies. Word of Phoenix Motors' open-source apprenticeship initiative had spread through industry networks, generating interest from manufacturers who had struggled with similar workforce development challenges. By Sunday afternoon, Helena had fielded calls from 12 different companies wanting to participate in beta testing the documented methodologies. This is becoming bigger than just preserving our program, Helena told Sam as they reviewed the weekend's progress. It's becoming a movement. Carlos Mendoza had emerged as an unexpected leader in the documentation effort. His bilingual skills and natural ability to explain complex concepts in simple terms made him invaluable for creating materials that could be used by companies with diverse workforces. More importantly, his perspective as someone who had recently completed the apprenticeship process gave him insights into which aspects of the program were most crucial for success. The mentors think it's about teaching technical skills, Carlos explained to a group of volunteers. The apprentices think it's about learning job skills, but really, it's about building relationships. Everything else flows from that. Sophia's documentary had evolved from a school project into a comprehensive record of an extraordinary moment in American manufacturing. Her footage captured not just the technical aspects of knowledge transfer, but the emotional dynamics of people who had found purpose and community in an economic system that increasingly treated workers as disposable resources. What I'm seeing here challenges everything I thought I knew about corporate culture. Sophia told her camera during a reflective moment. These people are risking their jobs to share their knowledge freely because they believe in something bigger than their individual self-interest. Sunday evening brought the first external validation of their efforts. Tom Phillips, the day shift engineer who had initially been skeptical of Sam's diagnostic abilities, arrived at the factory with a team of colleagues from the corporate headquarters of Midwest Manufacturing, one of Phoenix Motors' largest competitors. "We heard about what you're doing here," Tom explained to Sam. "Our CEO sent us to observe and learn. We've been struggling with similar workforce development challenges, and if your apprenticeship model can be adapted to our operations, we're prepared to implement it immediately." The presence of competitors documenting Phoenix Motors' training methodologies should have been concerning, but Sam found it encouraging instead. If the apprenticeship program principles were robust enough to work in different corporate environments, then making them public domain would benefit far more workers than keeping them proprietary ever could. The goal was never to give Phoenix Motors a competitive advantage. Sam explained to the visiting team. The goal was to prove that investing in workers' knowledge and experience creates value for every company's, employees, and communities. Monday morning arrived with a mixture of anticipation and dread. The complete documentation package, over 200 pages of curricula, case studies, personal narratives, and implementation guidelines, was ready for release. Helena had scheduled a press conference for 10 a.m. to announce the public domain availability of the open-source apprenticeship manual. But first, there would be another board meeting, where Helena would either secure support for the initiative or face the consequences of defying corporate authority. Sam arrived at the factory early, finding that many of the mentors and apprentices had done the same. There was a nervous energy in the air, the feeling of people who had committed themselves to a cause that was about to be tested in the most public way possible. Elena found him in his makeshift office, where he was reviewing the final version of the documentation package. "Dad, whatever happens today, I want you to know that this has been the best year of my life. Even though it meant giving up Arizona State. Especially because it meant giving up Arizona State. I learned things this year that no college program could have taught me. I learned that individual success doesn't mean much unless it's connected to something larger than yourself." At 9:30 a.m., Helena called Sam to her office for what might be their final conversation as colleagues. The board meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m., immediately followed by the press conference that would either validate their approach or mark the end of their careers at Phoenix Motors. "Are you ready for this?" Helena asked. Sam looked down at the factory floor, where Jerry Williamson was explaining precision measurement techniques to Carlos Mendoza, where Marcus Williams and Elena were troubleshooting a hydraulic problem together, where dozens of other mentor-apprentice pairs were continuing to learn from each other despite the uncertainty surrounding their future. "I'm ready," Sam said. "Whatever happens next, we've already proven that the program works. We've already shown that people matter more than profit margins, even if we both lose our jobs. Especially if we both lose our jobs, because that will prove we chose principles over self-interest, which is exactly the example these apprentices and mentors deserve." Helena smiled for the first time in days. "Sam Rodriguez, you are either the most idealistic man I've ever met or the most practical. I'm not sure which. Maybe both. Maybe that's what it takes to change how companies think about their workers." At 9:45 a.m., Helena gathered her papers and prepared to face the board of directors. In 15 minutes, she would either convince them that making the apprenticeship program public domain was a brilliant strategic move, or she would be terminated for insubordination and breach of fiduciary duty. Either way, the next hour would determine not just the future of Phoenix Motors' apprenticeship program, but the future of everyone who had believed that knowledge and experience were too valuable to be hoarded for competitive advantage. The Workers' Union Charter lay on Helena's desk like a manifesto, its simple principles about dignity and opportunity representing everything they had worked to achieve. In a few minutes, those principles would either be vindicated by corporate leadership or proven incompatible with the realities of modern business. Sam Rodriguez, who had started this journey as an invisible night shift mechanic trying to pay for his daughter's college education, was about to discover whether idealism and pragmatism could coexist in the boardrooms where America's economic future was decided. The Phoenix Motors boardroom had never seen anything like the presentation that began at 10 a.m. on that Monday morning. Helena Price stood at the head of the polished mahogany table, facing 12 directors whose expressions ranged from skeptical to openly hostile. Behind her, a projection screen displayed the first page of the open-source apprenticeship manual, 200 pages of carefully documented knowledge that represented 6 months of unprecedented collaboration between workers and management. "Ladies and gentlemen," Helena began, her voice steady despite the career-ending stakes, "what you're about to see challenges everything we thought we knew about competitive advantage in modern manufacturing." Board Chairman Robert Hart Wellno, relation to the consulting firm that had recommended terminating the apprenticeship program, leaned forward with barely contained irritation. "Price, we're here to discuss your unauthorized decision to compromise proprietary training methodologies that could have generated significant licensing revenue. I hope you have a compelling explanation." "I do. Helena clicked to the next slide, which showed productivity metrics from Building C. The apprenticeship program has generated quantifiable benefits that exceed our most optimistic projections. But more importantly, it has created something that can't be bought, sold, or replicated through conventional means, a culture of knowledge sharing that transforms how companies think about their most valuable assets. Director Margaret Chen, who oversaw human resources across Phoenix Motors facilities, raised her hand. Ms. Price, the Hartwell Efficiency Report clearly demonstrated that the apprenticeship program's costs outweigh its benefits. Why should we continue investing in an initiative that drains resources without providing adequate returns? Helena had been preparing for this question all weekend. Because the Hartwell report measured the wrong things. They calculated direct costs against immediate savings, but they ignored the value of institutional knowledge, preservation, workforce retention, and innovation capacity. She clicked to a new slide showing comparative data from companies that had implemented similar programs. Midwest Manufacturing implemented a pilot version of our methodology 3 weeks ago. They've already identified 0 in potential savings that their engineering team had missed. Precision Industries is documenting a 15% reduction in training time for new employees. Atlantic Motors has eliminated 2 recurring production problems that had been costing them $30 monthly. Director James Morrison, representing the pension fund that was Phoenix Motors' largest institutional investor, spoke next. These are impressive numbers, but they're also irrelevant if we're selling the company. The acquisition offers on the table would provide immediate returns to shareholders rather than speculative long-term benefits. Which brings me to the most important point, Helena said, advancing to a slide that showed acquisition valuations. Making the apprenticeship methodology public domain hasn't reduced Phoenix Motors' value to legitimate buyers. It has reduced our attractiveness to asset strippers who were only interested in acquiring our intellectual property for competitive advantage. She clicked to the next slide, revealing updated acquisition offers. 2 of the 3 potential buyers have maintained their original offers, recognizing that our value lies in operational excellence rather than proprietary training systems. The 3rd buyer, the one planning immediate workforce reductions, has withdrawn their offer entirely. Murmurs around the boardroom suggested this was news to some directors. Helena pressed her advantage. We now have serious offers from 2 companies that want to preserve our workforce and expand our apprenticeship program to their other facilities. Instead of selling our knowledge to the highest bidder, we've created a situation where buyers compete on their commitment to worker development. Director Patricia Walsh, who had been quiet throughout the presentation, finally spoke. Ms. Price, this is all very idealistic, but what about fiduciary responsibility? You've essentially given away intellectual property that belonged to shareholders. I've ensured that intellectual property serves its highest purpose, creating value for workers, companies, and communities rather than generating licensing fees for a single corporation. Helena's voice carried a conviction that surprised even her. The apprenticeship program's success isn't about Phoenix Motors gaining competitive advantage. It's about proving that investing in workers creates sustainable value for everyone. At that moment, the boardroom door opened and Sam Rodriguez entered, carrying a document that would change the trajectory of the entire discussion. Helena had arranged for him to arrive precisely at this moment, when the board would be most receptive to concrete evidence of the program's impact. Directors, I'd like you to meet Sam Rodriguez, the architect of our apprenticeship program. Sam has something to show you that I think you'll find compelling. Sam approached the table with the confidence of someone who had spent months proving that experience and wisdom could solve problems that pure technology couldn't address. He placed a bound document in front of each board member. This is a contract, Sam said simply, a $2.3 million contract from the Department of Labor to develop apprenticeship programs for manufacturing facilities nationwide. They want Phoenix Motors to serve as the lead contractor for a 3-year initiative that would create similar programs in 50 companies across 12 states. The boardroom fell silent. Chairman Hartwell picked up the contract, scanning its terms with obvious surprise. "When did this happen?" "The Department of Labor contacted us Friday afternoon," Helena explained. "They'd been monitoring our open-source documentation project and were impressed by both the methodology and the results. This contract would generate more revenue than any licensing agreement we could have negotiated privately." Director Morrison was reading the contract terms carefully. "This is a cost-plus contract with performance bonuses. If we meet the program's objectives, the total value could exceed $4 million over 3 years. And it positions Phoenix Motors as the national leader in workforce development," Helena added. "Instead of being acquired by a larger company, we become the company that other manufacturers come to for expertise." Sam had prepared for this moment by bringing Jerry Williamson and Carlos Mendoza to wait outside the boardroom. "I'd like you to meet 2 people who represent what this program can accomplish." Jerry entered first, carrying a presentation folder that contained documentation of his work with Carlos over the past 6 months. At 62, Jerry moved with the quiet dignity of someone who had spent 4 decades perfecting his craft and was now seeing that knowledge valued and preserved. "Directors, I'm Jerry Williamson. I've worked for Phoenix Motors for 38 years, and I was scheduled for early retirement before the apprenticeship program started. Today, I'm training the next generation of precision machinists while learning new techniques from people young enough to be my grandchildren." Carlos followed, his youth and enthusiasm creating a striking contrast with Jerry's weathered experience. "I'm Carlos Mendoza. 6 months ago, I was a high school senior with no prospects for skilled employment. Today, I'm a certified precision machinist with job offers from 3 different companies. But more importantly, I'm learning to see my work as part of something larger than just earning a paycheck." Helena watched the board members' faces as Jerry and Carlos described their partnership. These weren't abstract workforce development statistics. These were real people whose lives had been transformed by the investment in knowledge sharing and mutual respect. "The apprenticeship program didn't just teach Carlos technical skills," Jerry explained. "It taught him to think like a craftsman, to take pride in precision, to understand that quality work is its own reward. These are values that can't be programmed into machines or learned from textbooks." Carlos nodded enthusiastically. "And Jerry didn't just teach me about machining. He taught me about responsibility, about seeing problems before they become failures, about the dignity that comes from skilled work. I want to pass those lessons on to other young people who need opportunities." Director Chen leaned forward, obviously moved by the presentation. "Carlos, what are your plans after the apprenticeship program?" "I want to become a mentor myself someday. But first, I want to get an engineering degree through the partnership program that Ms. Price is developing with Arizona State University. I want to combine practical skills with theoretical knowledge so I can help solve problems that require both experience and innovation." The mention of the university partnership prompted Helena to advance to her final slide. "We've established preliminary agreements with 3 universities to create degree programs that combine traditional academics with apprenticeship experience. Students can earn engineering degrees while gaining practical skills, and working professionals can pursue advanced education without leaving their jobs." Director Walsh was taking notes rapidly. "These partnerships could attract federal education funding as well as Department of Labor contracts." "Exactly. Instead of seeing the apprenticeship program as a cost center, we should see it as a revenue generator that also serves our core mission of manufacturing excellence." Chairman Hartwell had been quiet throughout the presentations, but now he looked up from the Department of Labor contract with an expression that suggested recalculation rather than resistance. "Price, if we proceed with this federal contract, what happens to the acquisition negotiations?" "We withdraw from acquisition discussions and position Phoenix Motors as an independent leader in manufacturing innovation. The companies that wanted to buy us become our customers instead." "And if the federal contract doesn't meet its objectives?" Sam stepped forward. "Then we've spent 3 years proving that investing in workers creates value for companies and communities. Even if the contract fails, we'll have documented methodologies that other companies can use to develop their own programs. Helena concluded her presentation by returning to the fundamental question. The choice before us isn't between profitability and idealism. It's between short-term gains and sustainable value creation. The apprenticeship program has proven that investing in workers' knowledge and experience generates benefits that extend far beyond quarterly earnings. As the board prepared to vote, Sam looked around the room at faces that would determine not just his own future, but the future of everyone who had believed in the possibility that companies could succeed by empowering their workers rather than just managing them as costs to be minimized. The investors contract the Department of Labor agreement that had transformed the entire discussion lay on the table like a bridge between competing visions of corporate responsibility. In a few minutes, the board would decide whether Phoenix Motors would embrace that bridge or retreat to the familiar territory of traditional profit maximization. Either way, Sam Rodriguez had learned something that would stay with him regardless of the outcome. Sometimes the most practical decision was also the most principled one. The board's deliberation lasted 47 minutes, long enough for Sam to question every decision that had led to this moment, but not long enough to change his mind about the principles at stake. He waited in the corridor, outside the boardroom with Jerry, Carlos, and Elena, who had arrived with Marcus Williams and several other mentor-apprentice pairs. "Whatever happens," Jerry said quietly, "we proved that knowledge and experience have value. 6 months ago, most of us felt like we were just waiting for retirement or layoffs. Today, we know we have something important to contribute." Elena squeezed Sam's hand. "Dad, I've been thinking about what Mom would say about all this." "What would she say?" "That the most important victories aren't the ones that make you rich or famous. They're the ones that make you proud of who you are and what you stand for." The boardroom door opened and Helena emerged, her expression carefully neutral. "They're ready for us." Sam entered the boardroom to find the 12 directors arranged around the mahogany table, their faces reflecting a mixture of determination and uncertainty. Chairman Hartwell stood at the head of the table, holding a document that Sam recognized as the formal resolution that would determine Phoenix Motors' future direction. "Mr. Rodriguez," "Miss Price," Hartwell began, "the board has reached a decision regarding the apprenticeship program and the related strategic initiatives." Sam felt his heart hammering against his ribs. Everything they had worked for, all the relationships built and knowledge transferred, hung in the balance of whatever words would come next. By a vote of 8-4, the board has approved the following resolution. Phoenix Motors will accept the Department of Labor contract to develop nationwide apprenticeship programs. We will establish a new division dedicated to workforce development, with Helena Price as Vice President of Innovation and Sam Rodriguez as Director of Apprenticeship Programs. The words took a moment to register. Sam looked at Helena, who was smiling for the first time in weeks. "Furthermore," Hartwell continued, "the board has voted to withdraw from acquisition negotiations and pursue independent growth based on our apprenticeship program's success. We will establish university partnerships for degree programs that combine practical and theoretical education. And we will continue to make our apprenticeship methodologies available as open-source resources." Director Chen stood up. "Mr. Rodriguez, I want to personally apologize for the board's initial skepticism. What you've accomplished here challenges everything we thought we knew about workforce development. The apprenticeship program isn't just good for workers, it's good for business." "There are conditions," Hartwell added, his tone becoming more serious. "The Department of Labor contract includes performance metrics that must be met. If the program doesn't achieve its objectives within 2 years, both of you will be held accountable." "We understand," Helena replied. "We're prepared to be judged by results." "There's one more thing," Director Morrison said, pulling out another document. "The board has approved funding for a new training facility, a 15,000-square-foot space that will serve as the national headquarters for apprenticeship program development. It will include workshops, classrooms, and documentation centers where mentor-apprentice pairs from around the country can come to learn and share knowledge. Sam stared at the architectural plans Morrison placed on the table. The facility was larger and more sophisticated than anything he had imagined possible. "This is incredible." "This is necessary," Hartwell corrected. "If Phoenix Motors is going to be the national leader in apprenticeship programs, we need infrastructure that matches our ambitions." As the board meeting concluded, Sam found himself holding an employment contract that reflected his transformation from invisible night shift mechanic to nationally recognized workforce development expert. The salary was more than he had ever dreamed of earning, but more importantly, the position gave him authority to implement apprenticeship programs that could affect thousands of workers across the country. Helena approached him as the directors filed out of the boardroom. "Sam, there's something I need to tell you, something I should have mentioned earlier." "What?" "The university partnerships we discussed, they include full scholarships for family members of program participants. Elena wouldn't just be able to pursue her music degree, she'd be able to do it without any financial burden on your family." Sam felt his eyes welling up. "Helena, I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything yet. There's more. The scholarship program includes provisions for students to spend summers working in apprenticeship programs at different companies. Elena could study music during the academic year and work in sound engineering or acoustics during the summers. She gets both her dreams music and meaningful work. She gets the opportunity to create her own path instead of choosing between predetermined options." An hour later, Sam stood in the factory's main assembly area, addressing the largest gathering of Phoenix Motors employees in company history. Word of the board's decision had spread quickly, and workers from all three shifts had come to hear about the program's expansion. "6 months ago," Sam began, "most of us thought the apprenticeship program was just about preserving jobs for older workers and creating opportunities for young people. Today, we learned that it's about something much bigger." He looked out at faces that reflected every demographic in Phoenix: older workers who had feared obsolescence, young people who had thought skilled careers were beyond their reach, immigrants who had struggled to find opportunities to use their talents, women who had been excluded from traditionally male-dominated trades. "The Department of Labor contract means that what we've built here will be replicated in companies across the country. The knowledge that Jerry Williamson and Marcus Williams and all our other mentors have shared won't just benefit the apprentices in this room, it will benefit workers everywhere who deserve the chance to develop their potential." Carlos Mendoza stepped forward. "Mr. Rodriguez, I want to say something on behalf of all the apprentices. 6 months ago, most of us didn't think we had anything valuable to contribute. You taught us that everyone has knowledge worth sharing, and everyone has something to learn from others." Elena raised her hand. "Dad, I want to announce something. I've decided to pursue a degree in industrial engineering with a focus on workforce development. I want to help expand apprenticeship programs to include more women and underrepresented groups." The applause that followed was thunderous. Sam looked around at the faces of people who had trusted him with their futures and had been rewarded with opportunities they had never imagined possible. Jerry Williamson, who had been scheduled for early retirement, was now designing curriculum for a national precision machining program. Marcus Williams was consulting with companies nationwide about hydraulic systems optimization. David Chen had been promoted to regional coordinator for apprenticeship programs in the Southwest. But perhaps the most significant transformation was in the corporate culture of Phoenix Motors itself. The company that had once treated workers as expendable resources was now being recognized as a national leader in workforce development. The apprenticeship program had proven that investing in human potential created value that extended far beyond immediate financial returns. As the gathering dispersed, Sam found himself alone with Helena in the factory's main corridor. The building hummed with activity apprentices and mentors working together, engineers consulting with experienced technicians, young people learning from older workers who had rediscovered their sense of purpose. Sam, I need to ask you something, Helena said. Are you ready for what comes next? Managing a national program, dealing with federal oversight, coordinating with universities and companies across the country. I'm ready to learn, Sam replied. That's what this program has always been about, being willing to learn from people who know more than you do. Helena smiled. That's the right answer, because the hardest part isn't behind, it's ahead of us. Now we have to prove that what works in one factory can work everywhere. Sam looked at his new employment contractor document that represented not just a job change, but a complete transformation of his life and career. 6 months ago, he had been a night shift mechanic, worried about paying for his daughter's college education. Today, he was the director of a national workforce development program with the resources to change how American companies thought about their most valuable assets. Helena, there's something I need to do. What? Sam walked to his old workstation, where he had spent 15 years performing maintenance on machines that most people never saw or thought about. He opened his toolbox and carefully removed Maria's wedding ring, which he had worn on a chain around his neck since her death. I'm not forgetting her, he said quietly. I'm finally ready to honor her memory by moving forward with my life. He placed the ring in a small box and tucked it into his pocket. For the first time in 3 years, Sam Rodriguez was ready to embrace the future without being haunted by the past. The apprenticeship program had given him something he had never expected to find again: hope. Not just hope for his own future, but hope for a world where companies valued their workers' knowledge and experience, where young people could build meaningful careers, where the dignity of skilled work was recognized and rewarded. As he walked toward his new office, Sam carried with him the knowledge that sometimes the most important victories were the ones that helped other people achieve their dreams. The invisible man had become visible, not by seeking recognition for himself, but by creating opportunities for others to shine. 6 months later, Sam Rodriguez stood in the lobby of the Phoenix Motors National Training Center, watching busloads of apprentices and mentors arrive from manufacturing facilities across the Southwest. The 15,000-square-foot facility hummed with activity as 50 mentor-apprentice pairs from 12 different companies prepared to begin a 2-week intensive program that would replicate and expand the knowledge transfer methodologies first developed in Phoenix Motors' humble night shift. The transformation was visible everywhere Sam looked. Jerry Williamson, now 63, led a team of precision machining instructors who were training mentors from companies in Arizona, New Mexico, and California. His student Carlos Mendoza, now 18 and a certified machinist, worked alongside Jerry as an assistant instructor, demonstrating how apprentices could quickly become mentors themselves. Marcus Williams had been promoted to regional hydraulics coordinator, traveling to manufacturing facilities throughout the region to diagnose complex problems and train local mentor-apprentice pairs. His partnership with Elena had evolved into a comprehensive curriculum that combined technical training with sound analysis techniques, creating a unique approach to mechanical diagnostics that was being adopted by companies nationwide. Elena herself had thrived in ways that even Sam's optimistic expectations couldn't have predicted. Now 18, she was completing her freshman year at Arizona State University through the Accelerated Partnership Program, studying industrial engineering while maintaining her musical interests through the university's jazz ensemble. Her senior thesis project would focus on incorporating arts-based learning techniques into technical education, a fusion of her mother's creative legacy with her father's practical expertise. "Dad, you need to see this," Elena said, approaching Sam with a tablet displaying the morning's news coverage. The headline read, "Phoenix Program Reduces Manufacturing Training Time by 40% Nationwide." The article highlighted the Department of Labor's interim report on the apprenticeship initiative's first 6 months. The statistics were impressive: 847 mentor-apprentice pairs established across 23 states, 2.3 million in documented cost savings, and a 89% retention rate among program participants. But the human impact was even more compelling. Listen to this quote. Elena continued, reading from the article. "The apprenticeship program didn't just teach me technical skills," says Maria Santos, a 17-year-old apprentice at Detroit Manufacturing. "It taught me that my ideas and observations have value, that experienced workers want to share their knowledge, and that I have something meaningful to contribute to my community." Sam smiled, recognizing the echo of his own transformation in Maria Santos's words. The invisible mechanic, who had once felt overlooked and undervalued, had created a system that helped hundreds of other people discover their own worth and potential. Sophia Price, now a freshman at Northwestern University's journalism school, had continued documenting the program's expansion. Her original documentary about Phoenix Motors' apprenticeship initiative had won several awards and was being used by the Department of Labor as a recruitment tool for companies considering program adoption. But more importantly, it had captured the human dimension of workforce development in ways that government reports and corporate presentations never could. "Sophia's latest footage shows something really interesting," Elena said, advancing to a video clip on her tablet. "She's been following up with apprentices who completed the program 6 months ago. 92% are still employed in skilled positions, and 68% have been promoted or received significant salary increases." The success statistics were gratifying, but what pleased Sam most was the program's cultural impact. Companies that had initially viewed the apprenticeship initiative as a workforce development strategy were discovering that it transformed their entire approach to employee relations, innovation, and problem-solving. Helena Price, now Senior Vice President of Workforce Innovation for Phoenix Motors, entered the lobby carrying the document that had made this expansion possible. Elena's conservatory acceptance letter, now affordable through the scholarship program, had arrived that morning, offering her admission to one of the country's most prestigious music programs for the following year. "She's not going to accept it, is she?" Helena asked Sam, noting Elena's obvious contentment with her current path. "She's going to defer it again. She says she wants to complete her engineering degree first, then maybe pursue graduate study that combines music and industrial design." Smart choice. Elena's developing expertise that doesn't exist anywhere else, the intersection of creative problem-solving and technical innovation. Helena's own transformation had been as dramatic as anyone's. The hard-edged CEO, who had once focused exclusively on quarterly profits, was now recognized as a national leader in sustainable business practices. Her approach to workforce development had attracted attention from business schools, government agencies, and international corporations seeking to replicate Phoenix Motors' success. "Have you seen the latest acquisition interest?" Helena asked, showing Sam a formal inquiry from a European manufacturing consortium. "Let me guess, they want to buy our apprenticeship program expertise. They want to license our methodologies for implementation in their facilities across 15 countries. The initial contract would be worth $12 million over 3 years. Sam studied the proposal, noting how different it was from the acquisition offers they had faced a year earlier. Instead of buying Phoenix Motors to control their intellectual property, international companies wanted to pay for access to knowledge that remained in the public domain. "What did you tell them?" "That our methodologies are freely available to anyone who wants to implement them. But if they want consulting services, training support, and customized curriculum development, we're happy to provide that for appropriate compensation." This was the sustainable model they had hoped to achieve, making knowledge freely available while generating revenue from expertise and implementation support. Phoenix Motors had become profitable not by hoarding intellectual property, but by sharing it generously and helping others adapt it to their specific needs. As the afternoon training sessions began, Sam walked through the facility's workshops and classrooms, observing mentor-apprentice pairs from a dozen different companies learning to work together. The scene was both familiar and extraordinary. Experienced workers, patiently sharing knowledge with younger colleagues, creating relationships that would benefit both individuals and companies for years to come. In the precision machining workshop, A 58-year-old mentor from Seattle was showing a 19-year-old apprentice from Portland how to read the subtle vibrations that indicated tool wear. In the hydraulics lab, a grandmother from Tucson was teaching two college students from Phoenix how to diagnose system problems by sound analysis. In the electronics classroom, a retired Air Force technician was demonstrating circuit troubleshooting techniques to a group of recent high school graduates. The diversity was remarkable. Gender, ethnicity, educational background, and life experience all blended together in service of knowledge transfer and mutual learning. The apprenticeship program had evolved far beyond Sam's original vision of preserving institutional knowledge. It had become a celebration of human potential and a demonstration that investing in people created value that couldn't be measured solely in financial terms. That evening, Sam and Elena joined Helena and Sophia for dinner at a restaurant overlooking the Phoenix skyline. The conversation naturally turned to the program's future and the challenges of sustainable growth. The Department of Labor wants to expand to 50 states within 2 years, Helena said. They're talking about involving 500 companies and 50 mentor-apprentice pairs. That's ambitious, Elena replied. Do we have the infrastructure to support that kind of growth? We have something better than infrastructure, Sam said. We have a methodology that's designed to replicate itself. Every apprentice who completes the program becomes a potential mentor. Every company that implements the program becomes a training resource for other companies. Sophia looked up from her documentation notes. That's what makes this different from traditional corporate training programs. Instead of creating dependency on central resources, it creates distributed expertise that gets stronger as it spreads. The conversation was interrupted by Sam's phone, which displayed a call from Carlos Mendoza. Now 18 and working as a machining instructor, Carlos had been leading a training session for automotive suppliers in Detroit. "Mr. Rodriguez, you're not going to believe this," Carlos said, his voice filled with excitement. The Ford Motor Company wants to implement apprenticeship programs in all their North American facilities. They want to start with a pilot program for 200 mentor-apprentice pairs. That's incredible, Carlos. How did this happen? One of the suppliers we've been training had a quality problem that their engineers couldn't solve. The apprentice in their program, a kid named David, who's been learning from a 60-year-old welder, identified the issue in 15 minutes. Ford's quality manager was so impressed that he wants to understand how apprenticeship programs can be integrated into large-scale manufacturing. After ending the call, Sam shared the news with the others. The expansion to major automotive manufacturers represented a quantum leap in the program's reach and impact. "This is what we dreamed of," Helena said. "Proof that the apprenticeship model works at any scale, in any industry." As they prepared to leave the restaurant, Elena asked a question that had been on her mind throughout the evening. "Dad, do you ever think about what Mom would say about all this?" Sam considered the question carefully. "I think she'd be proud that we found a way to help people while staying true to our values. She always believed that the best solutions were the ones that lifted everyone up instead of just helping yourself." "She'd also be amazed at how far you've come," Elena added. "From night shift mechanic to national workforce development expert." "The title changed, but the work is the same," Sam replied. "It's still about listening to what people need, recognizing their potential, and creating opportunities for them to succeed." 6 months later, on a crisp spring morning, Sam stood before the largest audience of his life. 500 business leaders, government officials, and workforce development experts gathered for the National Manufacturing Summit in Washington, D.C. His presentation, titled "The Human Factor: How Investing in Workers Creates Sustainable Competitive Advantage," would be broadcast live to manufacturing facilities across the country. The statistics he presented were impressive. The apprenticeship program had expanded to 47 states, involved 312 companies, and trained over 30 mentor-apprentice pairs. Participating companies reported average productivity improvements of 23%, reduced training costs of 31%, and employee retention rates that exceeded industry averages by 40%. But Sam concluded his presentation with the story that mattered most to him, the transformation of individuals who had discovered their own worth and potential through the simple act of sharing knowledge across generations. The apprenticeship program works, he said to the assembled audience, not because it's a sophisticated training methodology, but because it's based on a simple truth. Every person has something valuable to teach, and every person has something important to learn. When we create systems that honor both sides of that equation, we unlock human potential that benefits everyone. As the audience rose in sustained applause, Sam caught sight of Elena in the front row, now 19, and serving as a student ambassador for the program. Beside her sat Jerry Williamson, 64, and still training precision machinists, and Carlos Mendoza, 19, and already supervising his own apprentices. The invisible mechanic had become visible by making others visible. The man who had once worried about paying for his daughter's college education had created a system that provided opportunities for thousands of young people. The widower who had been afraid to move forward with his life had built something that honored his wife's memory while embracing the future. As Sam left the podium, he carried with him the knowledge that the most important transformations weren't the ones that changed your title or salary. They were the ones that changed how you thought about yourself and your responsibility to others. The apprenticeship program had taught him that success wasn't about individual achievement, it was about creating conditions where everyone could achieve their potential. And in the end, that was the greatest lesson of all, that the most powerful change happened not when you climbed the ladder, but when you built more ladders for others to climb.